ready to start?
We are. Yeah, as soon as Cindy gets back. All right, commissioners, we're back at it. I think we'll follow the same process. Oh, let me turn my thing on. We'll follow the same process we used this morning. So welcome,
Thank
April.
you.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and get started. So how we're gonna do this today is we're just gonna do a round robin. So I'll start with a question, and then I'll turn to my colleague over here, and we'll go in a circle. We'll see how many questions we can get to in the time that we have, and then at the end, I'll make sure I leave some time for you to give any closing comments or remarks.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. All right. So first question. Describe how you would ensure accountability of city departments, and what methods do you believe to be the most effective in motivating, developing, and improving the performance of employees that you supervise?
Sure. One of the things that we've been working on in Ferndale for the last 2 years is a lot of our professional development and we call it expectation management, if you will. We have implemented all non-union employees to have a work plan at the beginning of each fiscal year that includes the strategies that were identified by City Council as priorities. I meet with our leadership team once a month. In some cases, maybe we do bi-monthly depending on the work plan, but we focus on ensuring that they have the support that they need, that they have the resources they need to complete those projects. And what we do with that is ensure that not only their core service delivery capabilities are there, but also those extra goals, the strategic plan, any other projects or programs that might be in place to ensure that they don't get lost in the shuffle. And that can happen. You can have the best strategic plan ever, but if you don't have a mechanism for how you're going to manage that. So we have staff meetings once a month, but I do the one-on-ones with the leadership team. We also end each fiscal year with an evaluation. This is our second year in a row as well as part of our performance improvement plan. Not only do we have a new work plan, but we have an evaluation to talk about what home runs did we make this year, what are we doing that's consistently awesome, if you will, and where are we struggling. And so one of the things that we looked at this year was that I was able to look at everybody's evaluations side by side, and one of the things that we noticed that was consistent throughout the organization is all of our home runs were the same. And so we're able to take a look at going a little deeper into the departments and going, what can we do to challenge that, to see some different home runs for next year.
Hi, April. How are you?
Good.
This is a pretty lengthy question, so just be prepared to answer it. Grand Rapids is part of a select group of cities from around the country working to develop innovative strategies to achieve racial equity and advance successful outcomes for all its citizens. The city manager is a key member of that project. It is critical that the person who is selected to become city manager will be able to provide leadership on these projects. Please explain why your experience, track record, and approach would make you an ideal candidate to help lead this project team in developing a new set of strategies to address equity and inclusion, disparities, pursue hiring practices that allow the city employees based on to reflect the makeup of our community, and to provide an enhanced opportunity for career growth with the organizations.
Wow, you were not joking, were you? So I think that in many ways we're doing very similar things in Ferndale as it relates to not only equity outside of the city as an organization, but the organization as a whole. One of the things that we look at is very much how are we moving our organization forward and making sure that we have those goals in mind. So our council has very much made it a priority for us to increase the diversity within our workforce. We've doubled that in the last 5 years through different recruiting processes and things of that nature. But really where it comes down to is making sure that that stays as a priority, and as the leader that you're identifying that. So One of the ways that what we're looking at is also the opportunities for leadership internally with the City of Ferndale. So it's not only about allowing the equity to come into the organization, but how do they flourish when they're there? One of the things that we've been really focused on is we somewhat term it, the more you learn, the more you earn. But what we're doing is offering people an opportunity for growth and movement. So we believe in Ferndale that you do not have to be in management or in a leadership position in order to be a leader within our organization. How can we get you to grow? How can we help your skill sets through extra training, opportunities for cross-training, and new opportunities for you to develop without waiting for retirement or somebody to leave, which is very typical in government. You're often not allowed to move forward until you see some of that movement through retirements or people leaving. And so what we're doing is allowing opportunities for people who may not have had a college education that can move up within, for instance, DPW or City Hall. One of our huge success stories is that we started this process in City Hall with our customer service reps, with our inspectors, and are moving now toward our DPW department. But one of our biggest success stories is, I'll talk really briefly about, is our inspector. They used to be just code enforcement officers. So you'd come in making, $10, $11 an hour as code enforcement, and we had high turnover. And now we have moved them into inspectors, and they have an opportunity to not only do code, but they have opportunities to do inspection services and rental and building and things of that nature. One of our code enforcement officers under this new program was now able to he has his, what used to be called Act 54 license. And so now he's also a building inspector. And this would not have been able to happen had we not opened those doors and allowed for different and various opportunities for education. And I hope that while it's not specifically dedicated toward the diversity part of that I'm hoping that will help increase opportunities for those that are coming into our workforce and needing and having those opportunities for that growth. And what we say in Ferndale is that we want to build your resume and give you those opportunities as much as possible, that you can go anywhere you want, but you choose to stay in Ferndale. So it's keeping that in mind as, and every year when we do, too, as it going back more to the equity piece of that, is every year we take a look at our strategies as it relates to bringing in more diverse applicants. We're struggling incredibly hard with our police and fire department of diversity, and I know that's a national problem. It's not just a local problem, but that I love that our council in Ferndale says that's still not a good enough answer. So it's that, how do you reframe this year? So now we're working with the different publications and things of that nature to try to move that forward. So you have to keep that in mind and know that that's a priority. And I think as a leader of this organization, knowing and understanding how critical and important that social equity is to this body and to this community, that's going to be a part of all of the conversations that we have, in particular as we start moving forward in hiring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kelly next, and I was reminded that I forgot to use the timer. So just to help you have a sense of how much time so we can get through as many questions as possible, I'll start doing the timer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So welcome back, April. It was nice to meet you last night. I would like you to describe your philosophy toward budgeting and fiscal sustainability. Excuse me. Tell us about the process that you would use to prepare the budget, and then how you would incorporate the governing bodies, in other words, our priorities, into the budgeting process itself.
Well, the City of Ferndale has just recently moved to a five-year budget process. When I first came on board, we were at 1 year, moved quickly to 2 years. We were at 3 years last year with a 2-year forecast, and we're officially at a 5-year budgeting process, which is incredibly helpful. First, you have to know what you're dealing with, and being able to take into consideration how heavy rollbacks and things of that nature impact your budget, your decisions will be different. So with that, we have not only looked at a 5-year budget plan that includes core service delivery and across all funds, it includes capital. So we're able to align that with the strategic planning process. So the City of Ferndale embarked, we've always done strategic planning, but for the first few years I was there, it was more, I call it budget planning, if you will, and 2 years ago we did a complete overhaul of our strategic plan with 7 core critical success factors. I think you guys might refer to them as pillars. Ours are our critical success factors, and what we do is we meet with council prior to the budget workshops to ensure that we have those priorities placed in the budget process. With that, then we take it back to the team, and the team knows where their priorities are, and they ensure that they budget appropriately for what that is. That could be staff planning, it could be capital projects, whatever that looks like. And we meet internally and we vet that. And if in most instances we know our team is so cohesive on it, they know what their budget is, and if it varies, that we're going to have to come back with some different options. And then I think given if you will, taking that process and bringing it here, you guys, this commission truly has some huge and wonderful goals and priorities, and I think that we're going to need to keep realigning those and ensuring that those are appropriately budgeted for as we go out into the future. And I know you guys, with your transformational plan, it's going to be important to have those conversations. One of the things that we've talked about in Ferndale is we're also to that same point where we've maximized our human capital, our employees, our capital planning process, and we're kind of running out of ideas. So we're looking at possibly moving into more official priority-based budgeting, and that might be something we would want to consider here in Grand Rapids if that is indeed the case. So just constantly realignment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner.
Hello.
Hi.
So there are times when we must all deal with conflict. So if you could tell us how you've dealt with an adversary or citizen, coworker, employee, or elected official, and how you managed the conflict, and explain the steps that you went through to resolve the issue.
Sure, I think let's talk about a residence conflict, because that can be the most unique and most sensitive. It's not uncommon at all for City Hall to receive concerns or frustration as it relates to somebody in the community, especially when you start talking about development. That's a very adversarial conversation for many people. The first thing you want to identify is what is that win-win situation for both of us. I think at the end of the day, I will use an example. We had a community members that came to my office. I'd only been there about a year, and we had, they were very frustrated. Most of our parks are a little larger in size, and you can, purposely have put, fields and basketball courts a little bit away from the residential, the actual homes. Our particular community center, though, is a smaller patch, and they came in and they were just really frustrated at the consistent basketball activity that was happening in what they thought was in their backyard, or felt that was in their backyard. And it was talked about the constant noise. They were very frustrated, and so they had been trying to petition to get those basketball hoops removed for because they didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to hear it anymore, and it had been. They were frustrated. It had been going on for about a year and a half of them trying to find some kind of opportunity to make the noise stop, if you will. And so we sat down and we had a conversation with them about what the end game would be, and they wanted the basketball hoops removed. So I met with the team and said, okay, what are we going to do here? Because the recommendation of changing it from basketball hoops to Foursquare was just what they wanted, was not an appropriate solution. So the police department and the recreation team got together, and we came up with a compromise with the group, which was we put in removable basketball rims, and so we gave them Sundays off. We didn't put them back up on Sundays, and we took the basketball hoop down at dark when staff would leave when dusk happened. And the community group was incredibly happy with that. They were appreciative that we listened, but we still kept the basketball hoops. We still felt that was really important, but we knew that just given where the location was, that there was an opportunity to readjust a little bit. So you have to look at every conflict, in my opinion, as an opportunity to change something or to make something better, because usually it's a frustration on a very different level than when, she came in and wanted them removed, and every year she brings me flowers in the summer to tell me thank you. So that it worked well for both of us to have that compromise.
Thank you. All right, we'll go down here to Commissioner Jones.
Yep. Good afternoon, April.
Thank you.
If a single member or two members of the City Commission approached you with a request or position you knew to be contrary to that of the majority, how would you deal with that situation while maintaining a working relationship with that individual or individuals?
That never happens. Again, I think the bigger piece of that, one of the components that I think if you were to talk to my council in Ferndale, that as commissioners you would see one of the things that I do really well is a collaborator. And so there's, first and foremost, I need to know why there is a dissent and why is why does one person believe another way versus another. And work through that process of understanding where people are aligned. And again, the deeper you ask questions, the more you can understand that some of the opposition is because either of lack of information or misunderstanding, or just in general, they're not comfortable with where we're going. And so if I can help support with more information or things of that nature to try to, again, to get that compromise, that's where I try to go. However, there are often times where it doesn't matter, and that there are going to be people who don't agree. And I love our current mayor. I've learned a lot from him. He's an awesome mentor. And when I first came on, he did not like dissension at all. He wanted everybody we wanted a united front. And now we've realized that the healthy conversation is important, and it's okay to be able to debate and have a disagreement. And I think that as long as I, as the city manager, respect and understand where the commissioners are coming from in equal sides, that there's an opportunity to just to know and accept the fact that there is not going to be an agreement on that, and hopefully help manage the frustration if the vote, if the vote is yes, how can I help those that disagreed with that work through that process. So it's sometimes you try to do the best you can to try to get that united front, but sometimes it's okay to not have that and to be comfortable with being frustrated and possibly losing a little footing in that relationship and trying to get that back through other trust opportunities.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner?
You're welcome. So have you thought about leaving your present position before this current opportunity? If yes, what held you back from doing so? And if no, why now? Why Grand Rapids?
Sure. I would say that leaving Ferndale would be probably one of the most difficult decisions that I would make. And one of those reasons, two of those reasons are because we have an amazing city council that supports our team, and we have a team that supports each other in city council. And I was not actively looking for new employment, and I saw the posting for the city of Grand Rapids and was enamored immediately. There we share a lot of the same core values that Grand Rapids and Ferndale do as it relates to the needs of the community, social equity, innovation, sustainability. And one of the things that people are a little surprised, I've been in Ferndale for 7 years, that why haven't you moved on to bigger cities or things of that nature? And a lot of it is because there's not a lot of communities that support those core values as it relates to community. And so when you get an opportunity to take a look at another city that has what we term is getting to do really cool things every day, and that's what we say in Ferndale. I've had a lot of team members who've been there for 7 years for that exact reason, because we get to do some of these truly transformational opportunities in communities. And so when I saw that posting, that was it hit me very quickly that we use you as an example a lot in Ferndale. You guys are a lot of, we look and research what you guys are, what City of Grand Rapids is doing, and I was really excited to see that posting. And then to put the icing on the cake, I am from West Michigan, and my family is still in West Michigan, so it was kind of a trifecta.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Hi, April.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. And I have to get back to my question here. Like Commissioner Moody, I'm going to read mine because it's a little long as well. It is likely the new city manager will have an opportunity in the next several years to fill a number of key positions on the city's leadership team because of expected retirements. How would you create a team that possesses a shared vision and strategic plan to realize that vision?
Okay, so this is actually one of, I would consider, my proudest accomplishments in Ferndale. We, when I first came on board about 7 years ago, we had a very different culture than we do now. It was very much a culture of they were not helpful. It was a little crabby, if you will, and just a lot of the way we've always done it. So moving forward with that, what we have done is we have really modified our recruitment process. So I'll focus more on the implementation rather than the planning side. So of course we would plan and understand where those retirements are happening and things of that nature. But what we have done to build the culture here is something that we are absolutely loving right now. So what we have done is we have really focused on kind of a level playing field, as you will, of people who are qualified. And what was happening is that we were not being able, for instance, in our police department, when people were really hiring, we would get 100 to 150 applications. What we were finding was by the time you did phone calls and phone screens, or you found who was the test scores, you weren't getting down very far, and we were getting very frustrated that we would spend days and days in interviews and not getting candidates that we felt fit Ferndale. So what we started were, we call them recruitment open houses, and we started in the police department. And what we did is that instead of doing phone interviews, if you made minimum requirements and we vetted you that far that you would come in for an open house, not only that we could meet you, but that you could hear about the city of Ferndale, the benefits, why you want to work there, and get them excited about it. And then we did, I know this is going to sound like speed dating, literally. So we would bring in our team, for instance, in the police department, other police officers, the staff there, and instead of doing phone screens, we put them in groups of 2 or 3, and they would bring in the candidate and ask them 3 questions, and we would all meet again as a team and talk about who did we think we wanted to bring in further for our interviews. So that started it in the police department, and moving quickly forward, we've done that in all of departments. And what we've done, what has been an unanticipated outcome, is the people we bring on that team to do those recruitment dating, is that we brought in people who get our vision and who get our culture, but also the people who don't. So that the people who are frustrated or don't understand where we're going are starting to see and understand why we're hiring the way we're hiring. I will tell you that the common conversation that we have among all of our teams and our departments is this has been the best thing that we've ever done for hiring, because you're bringing in people who fit, who we're having opportunities to meet people we may not have met before, because if your test score is 70, it's helped our diversity to allow more opportunity to meet and talk with people than, again, doing 15 or 20 phone screens. So it has really been a transformational experience for many of our departments, and we have gotten some incredibly talented people coming in and being able to fulfill that vision, because we also align questions that very much. One of our questions is consistently tell us the biggest thing that you did in innovation in the last year, or what have you done to contribute in other ways. So there's a lot of opportunities for really getting people in here to fit that vision, but it also helps the people who are here to help choose that team, and whether you support the direction or not, at least you understand where we're going. So that I would absolutely look at bringing that here if that was something they were interested in.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So I have a question about community and police relations. And so if you are following some of the work that we're doing here, this is a priority for us in our community. So I'm curious if you could share your experience in overseeing public safety, and then either what you have done in your community around improving community and police relations, or thoughts you have about what you would bring.
Sure. So our police department joined 21st Century Policing about 2 years ago. They brought forward that opportunity that I believe you guys are also participating in that as well. They brought that forward, actually the police department did. They said, we were looking at a better way to connect with our community. One of the things that we've noticed in Ferndale, and I would believe that this is happening here, is that the long-term residents aren't necessarily here anymore, the ones that knew who the police officers were. So you've got new police officers, you've got new residents, and we have a lot of mobility, we have a lot of rental, a lot of students coming in and out. So there's no long-term trust there. Everybody's rebuilding it as they go. So they approached us and said, I think it's time we need to reconnect with our community because we're feeling very separate from them. So they brought us forward the opportunity for 21st Century Policing, and we with that, authorized another officer to do what we call our community engagement officer. So we started that process and started looking at the 6 pillars of the 21st century policing model. And with that, though, while things were improving, we had a couple setbacks this last year that hit the press and also hit our community pretty hard. We had some trust issues. And we, at that point in April, we had to sit down with the police department and really figure out what was going on. So I sat down with the police chief because we had to start wondering what was going on at the leadership level. And he'd been there for 40 years and was ready to retire in November. And we agreed together that it'd be best for him to, we were going to do 2 things. One, we wanted to bring in a consultant to take a look at what we call the cultural assessment to make sure that our core values and our values of our community were present in our police department. And then he felt at that time too that in order to really be able to do that, that research in the best way possible, that he offered to retire a little early so that we could have those opportunities. We actually, I believe the report is coming out this next week for us to review and bring back to council an action plan of how we're going to identify the better ways that we can rebuild the trust in our community and to make sure that some of these concerns that we have don't happen again. Some of the conversations that are coming forward will be very much about a police oversight board. We asked in this report about racial bias, some of those things that we feel are going to be very critical moving our team forward. We have implemented some things already. One of the first over on the east side of the state, we have body cams, and we just finished our full deployment, I think about 6 weeks ago. So we do understand and recognize how critical and important that police relations are, as well as one of the big components is we desperately need to get more diversity on our police force, and it's been very frustrating that we don't have that. And so we're going to be working on a different model as well for recruitment on that yet as well. So we're very anxious to get that report back so that we can start implementing some of those ideas. Very excited. So, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us about a time when you provided leadership to accomplish a difficult project, and how did you see that project, and what was the expectations of it?
Sure. I think that one of the things that I like to, as a leader, is my job is to remove obstacles for the team so that they can get the job done, support them and remove obstacles. One of the, I try very hard to let our team work at the speed and work in a way that works best for them. So I'll talk a little bit about a time period last year when we were doing union negotiations, and I have a great HR director and at the time, and she was very, very well adept at doing union negotiation, things of that nature. We had implemented a salary study, and we were very concerned that we were losing talent due to our pay ranges and things in all areas, in particular police and fire. And we found our salary study, we were significantly lower. And in a time right now where we also no longer have defined benefit pensions, we were becoming, we had to be more prepared to readdress other opportunities for pay and things. So what we did was we did the salary study, and it came back that we had some significant issues, and in our mind it was a slam dunk, if you will. And when we went start working with the police department on implementing some of these changes, it wasn't necessarily fair across the board, but it provided some of the framework that we needed to implement new salary ranges. And what happened is that we ended up having a pretty bad communication breakdown. So all of the trust that we had built with the union, our HR director became very frustrated. They became frustrated with her because it kind of became it's either this way or no way. And so I had to step in and really sit down with HR and talk about could this look like, and sat down with the police department and we re-talked about it and re-looked at what is it that you want, how can we meet and try to get these goals met. And so what should have been it shouldn't have been as complicated. It did become complicated, and we needed to be able to be prepared to take I mean, we have this all the time with development. You know, you think it's an easy sell, and the next thing you know, it's blowing up in your face. And so I was able to step in and reframe, and it was a really interesting learning process for me and for HR, in the fact that you know, fact and belief don't always match up, and sometimes it doesn't matter what the facts show and even though it made sense and it would mostly be beneficial to the police department, they were really uncomfortable with the inequity of these changes, and so we were able to modify that enough that we were able to phase it in and make sure that everybody felt that they got what they wanted out of that study. And so that was a time I had to step in and kind of reframe the leadership and maybe, hang on a minute, let's back up, let's repair those relationships with the union and start this conversation over with a fresh start.
Thank you.
So, April, how do you believe others in your organization would describe your management and decision-making style? And if we approached your current workforce, what would we hear about you in this regard from employees that you supervise?
I think for a long period of time, it was hard to describe my management style, but I have a more distinct story to tell you, if you will, that will help. So I was in Ferndale for about a year, and the fire chief called me in a panic and said, there is a major fire in our industrial area, and I need you to come and be the PIO because we're going to be too busy and we're bringing in other jurisdictions. And when I came onto the scene, there was my fire chief, and if you knew, he's a huge Irish man, was standing on top of the fire truck, on the very top, I'm talking the roof, and he was standing there with his walkie-talkie, and you could see him talking through his team on what was happening. And I looked at him and I thought, that is a leader. That is somebody who is looking at the big picture, but is helping his team in the best way possible by talking about the obstacles. He was pointing people to go in certain directions by what he saw from the top of that fire truck. And that is, I think, a huge demonstration of my leadership, where I am there to provide that big picture, but I'm there to support you, but I'm not in the fire with you. And I notice sometimes I talk about that with our team about, you know, a lot of us have big departments as well, that I want you on top of that fire truck, I don't want you in that fire. But sometimes you have to go in and you have to help people, show them how to fight that fire. But sometimes it's really easy to get caught in that and making sure that you're on top. And I think that when I had to tell my team that I was applying for this position, every single one of them said, if you get it, please bring in a person I don't need somebody to come in and do my job. I want them to be a leader and to help us with moving forward. So I think that's my fire truck story, and that's how I lead, is I remove obstacles and try to keep in that line of that big picture, and I think they would all say that.
So if you become our next city manager, what would you hope to accomplish in the first 6 months and then the following 2 to 3 years?
Such a big question. I think what I would like to do is, obviously the first 90 days is going to be the wait for the new person to start pile. So we'll have to get through that. But I know that you have some significant priorities that are important to you. I think the first thing I'd like to do is, if I get hired, is to participate in that training for the racial equity piece. I noticed in there that there was some training that was done. But I think really solidifying what priorities can be completed within that time frame. I know that things are moving fast. We can't afford to keep waiting for the next person to get here, and so I know that you're going to want some quick action as it relates to what can we think we're going to accomplish. So sitting down with that team and taking a look at your transformational plan and seeing where that fits in alignment with everybody's other jobs that they need to do, that would be critical in making sure that we're all comfortable in that next year and what we can expect to say. You know, I'd love to do an annual report that says we've completed all of these items and have every single one of you going that this is great, this is awesome. So.
April, wondering, what are your thoughts and experiences regarding citizen input and participation? And along those lines, if you could also speak to Any thoughts around strategies that encourage affordable housing and policies to encourage and incentivize neighborhood revitalization?
Oh, you guys are really good at your big questions, aren't you? So participation in any event is critical, and I think that one of the things that we get caught in is that one type of participation has to work the same in every area of the community. I think I mentioned it last night at the forum, is we have to know and understand how is the city of Grand Rapids, how is each neighborhood involved and participate. Some of them might want a town hall, some of them you might need to go to a neighborhood meeting. Some people use social media, some people use See-Click-Fix, whatever that is to try to get that information. You need to figure out what that looks like. And so having we call it a communication strategy or communication plan around certain items is really important, and not that they won't all look the same. One of the things that we're finding is let's talk about affordable housing for just a few minutes. One of the things that we did in Ferndale is the first thing and the low-hanging fruit that we could do is we changed our incentives policy to ensure that there was affordable housing component. So now moving forward, anybody who does any kind of incentive, brownfield, Oprah, anything of that nature has to be able to conform to our policies. And it varies depending on how big your development is and how much affordable housing you have to provide. Some of the other things that we have done is we adjusted to some 4-base code in certain areas of the community that will give you a density bonus if there's affordable housing available for, if there's affordable housing as part of that. So we're trying to put in through policy and incentives ways to encourage people to do affordable housing. We're also finding though that while our community is interested and wants affordable housing, and we know as a team and as our council we need it, people are also fighting that as well. So what we're having is we've had 2 of the last big developments that we have in our community have had an affordable housing component to it. And both of those in a different neighborhood have been very vocal about their concern about affordable housing being in there. So also we need to start taking a look at how we tell our story about what is affordable housing and what we mean by that, and how that affects our community. So I think it's kind of a push-pull. You have the engagement piece of it as well as trying to implement policy and making sure that we have those right questions. And the other component to that is, are we asking the right questions? What exactly is that fear when people start fighting in development or whatnot, making sure that we're asking different questions to ensure that the fear that we think we hear or the concerns or the anxiety are the right concerns and the anxiety, so we can address those head on.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, from what I understand, Ferndale is a property tax-based community for the most part, where Grand Rapids is a city that relies heavily on our income tax base for a significant portion of our budget. And we've kind of historically always looked at income tax as the way in which we get to spend on capital projects and kind of priorities outside of the core base of business. And so, as it comes to things like incentives, we've always looked at offsetting property tax with the growth in income tax as a way to move forward to continue to grow that tax base. And we know that that's going to flatten out in a couple of years potentially as economic cycles change. How do you view income tax growth, and how do you priorities or strategies to continue to ensure that we continue to grow our income tax base here in Grand Rapids?
Sure, I think there's a lot of factors in that as well. I think that understanding and creating more opportunities for more development. I think you're doing that in a lot of your areas. I know you're doing that in your CADs and your bids and things of that nature. So allowing more flexibility to bringing in more tax base, but that allows more jobs and allows more people not only to be able to come into work in Grand Rapids, but people to work in Grand Rapids. But I think too is we don't want to overlook obviously the opportunities outside of Grand Rapids, and making sure that our strategies for mobility and transportation are there as well, and really moving opportunities forward to leverage more and more growth and development here. So I think understanding, are we bringing in the right jobs? What areas can we focus on? Not only the low-paying jobs, but the high-paying jobs, but the ones in the middle, and where all that fits, and where we can master plan it to ensure that we're getting the right business components in here. I think one of the things that I've noticed about Grand Rapids is you're being very strategic about who and what you want here, and that needs to continue to happen. I think so often some communities are just they want to bring in just whatever you can to get built, and that's not what we don't have to do that here in Grand Rapids. We've been very much doing that in Ferndale, is really trying to control our own destiny. That's one of the things that we talk about there, is don't let the market control us. We need to do what's best for our community and not just get the best thing that's going to be built there. So we want to make sure that we have strategies in place. We talk about planning and development and zoning, but do we have strategies in place of the right types of businesses that we want? On the tour, it was mentioned the concern about the lack of manufacturing jobs. So what can we do to bring in more jobs in manufacturing as well? So again, I think there's a lot of components coming at it, and I think there's a lot of strategies that Grand Rapids is putting in place to help drive that.
Thank you. So commissioners, we've gotten through the questions that we've asked other candidates, so I'm just going to see if any of you have any additional questions, follow-up questions that you would like to ask. If not, I'll give April an opportunity to give a few closing comments. So any additional questions, commissioners? All right. All right. So if you want to
Sure.
go ahead and take a few minutes to close, you're welcome to do that.
Thank you so much. Again, I want to just thank you for the opportunity of being here. It's an honor to be part of this candidate slate. I know that in looking at the recruitment profile, you guys have an amazing amount of priorities and excitement around Grand Rapids. And I just want to say that I know, being the smaller community girl here, that one of the things that I think I can really bring to this organization is the solid leadership that I provide our team in Ferndale. I think that if you were to ask me what is your #1 strength, it would be building that team and that leadership and the collaborative opportunities that we have with our team and with our city council. And I think that I've been thrown in a lot of leadership positions in my life, and I think that I am absolutely prepared to take that on here in Grand Rapids, and I would be happy to do so. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for the time and energy that you have put into this process and taking it so seriously. And I've enjoyed my experience here in the last 2 days, and I look forward to working with you again in the future. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, April. All right, so commissioners, why don't we take a 7-minute break. If anyone wants blueberry pie, Commissioner Lanier has it here. She received, thank you. Thank you, Beth. But she has utensils and paper. So we'll take a 7-minute break, use the restroom, grab something to drink if you need it. And we'll come back in here at 2:05. Does that work? All right, commissioners, we'll go ahead and get started with our next interview. So all of us met Michael last night. So let me give you a rundown how we'll do this today. We're gonna ask questions. We'll do it in a round robin type of process. I'll start and we'll go this way. Each of us have a couple questions, and then we'll make sure that there's time at the end for you to make some comments. I will go ahead and use this little timer up here just to give you a sense of how much time so that we can get through as many questions as we possibly can.
Great.
All right?
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Can everyone else?
A little closer? Is that better? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Wonderful. All right, so I'll start. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes, good to have you again. The first question, I should say, is describe how you would ensure accountability of city departments, and what methods do you believe to be the most effective in motivating, developing, and improving the performance of employees that you supervise?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question to start with. So, accountability takes many forms. I prefer to really be able to look at data. So in terms of accountability for departments, I rely heavily on a performance management system that we've developed over the years, which has consistently for the last 5 years won ICMA recognition for its sophistication. We call this our scorecard. It's something that anyone can look at on our website, and it makes sense. It's red, yellow, and green. It's like a stoplight. Obviously, departments that are doing well are in the green. If there's caution ahead, it's yellow, and if we're not doing what we need to do, it's red. So for myself as the city manager, it gives me the opportunity to look on a monthly basis at how our departments are performing in terms of the benchmarks and the standards that we've set for them. This is an organization-wide effort. We use it in every department that we have. We use it in the divisions below the department level, and we review that with our executive management team on a monthly basis. We also go over it with our city commission at their quarterly financial updates. So not only am I ensuring the performance of and accountability of the departments through our scorecard system, but we're sharing that with the elected officials on a quarterly basis to make sure that they understand that the departments are doing their jobs, and that as the city manager, I'm doing my job. Now, in terms, the second part of your question was how are we working with employees and departments to improve performance? We run a very extensive professional development program within the city of Tamarack. All of our employees are not only allowed to, but in many cases required to participate in the professional development program. We have plus or minus 500 employees on any given day, and we have a training coordinator through our human resources department that provides for training for all of our employees, things that run the gamut from how do we properly use a podcast or a webcast to do group training in a conference room setting, to mandatory organization-wide cultural competency training for all of our employees at every level of the organization. So we really do run the gamut. As far as with my own executive team, we participate in executive level training. All of my assistants, all of my department directors, and all of our assistant department directors have all been through either the LEAD or the SEI program at the University of Virginia. That's a 1 or a 2 week program that we send them to sit with other professionals from around the nation to participate in professional development that is organization and performance management based. We've been successful enough with that with our department directors and assistants that we're now down into the division manager level with that. That is a substantial investment in our employees, and we are working to bring the lessons that we've learned through those programs back to our organization and do what I would call a train the trainer exercise with the rest of the employees. Obviously, we can't send every single employee to that program, but we are very committed to professional development. Number one, to have the best trained employees that we can. Number two, to make sure that they continue to see satisfaction in their jobs and want to remain with our organization and allow us to remain an employer of choice in our region.
Michael, this question, as I said earlier, is pretty lengthy. So you might want to just lay back and relax. Grand Rapids is part of a select group of cities from around the country working to develop innovative strategies to achieve racial equity and advance successful outcomes for all of its citizens. The city manager is a key member of the city's project team, and it is critical that that person selected be able to provide leadership on these projects. Please explain why your experience, your track record, your approach would make you an ideal candidate to help lead this city in these projects and developing new strategies to address the equity, the inclusion, the disparities, and to pursue hiring practices that allow the city's employees space to look at better ways to reflect and to make up the community, and to provide an enhanced opportunity for career growth within this city's organization.
Thank you. That was quite a lengthy question. Let me talk a little bit about that. I think I have some good information to share with you. I have looked at the Racial Equity Here program that the City of Grand Rapids is a part of. I think that that is a tremendous opportunity for the City of Grand Rapids, and to be a part of that select group of cities to participate in the way that you are. I think that that is exceptional leadership by this mayor and this city commission. A little bit more to that. What I am most impressed with, and I'll answer the question in a minute, but what I am most impressed with is your ability to have the conversation. You know, social equity, racial equity, generational equity, gender equity, all of the social equity issues that our nation is facing at this time, you're addressing in positive ways, very openly, very engaging in the community. Most communities are sticking their heads in the sand about those issues, and so just the fact that you're having the open conversation that you are is demonstrative of the type of culture that this mayor and this commission has and is instilling in the organization and is leading the community by. Tamarack started life as a retirement community. When I got there, the median age was 67. We were old. We were white. Today, the median age has dropped to 48. Tamarack is a majority-minority community now, and it is a vibrant and affordable, safe community. Great neighborhoods, great parks, great business community, great chamber of commerce, great place to call home. Has all of the same challenges that the city of Grand Rapids does. Affordable housing is an issue. We have it. We're trying to maintain it. We're trying to develop new affordable opportunities for the people that continue to move to our city. Jobs is an issue. We need better, higher paying jobs. We've been active in the Fort Lauderdale Alliance, which is like your Right Place Now group. It's the regional economic development engine to bring better paying jobs and better businesses to our community. We've done now, I think, a remarkable job. We've just created a $5 million economic development reserve to help small businesses and property owners to prosper in our community. You know that small businesses are the foundation of any business community in any city. And as far as dealing with the racial equity issues, in Tamarack, we are a majority-minority community. We have a very strong Hispanic population, very strong Caribbean island population, very small, moderate African-American population, and a thriving Asian population. And these groups sometimes do not necessarily see eye to eye on city issues and city policy. However, I will tell you that as we have recognized this issue we recognized this issue 15 years ago, We've actively managed the transition of our community for the last 15 years to ensure that the programs and the services, the offerings that the city provides meet the needs of the community. And we've done this in a proactive way with, I think, very exceptional leadership, and we've benchmarked it. We've surveyed our community for the last 15 years. Community surveys, business surveys, employee surveys, to be sure that the offerings that we are providing are what the community wants and are meeting the community's needs, and to take the information that we get back through those surveys and use that as actionable intelligence to demonstrate to the residents of our community and to our business community that we are listening to them and that we are acting on the input that we get from them. We've been doing that for 15 years. We have a very well-established track record as far as that goes, and it feeds directly into our performance management system. So that's how we run our city. As far as for the community and for the employees, in some of the materials that I prepared for you, I described our executive management team. Again, we are a majority-minority community. If you look at my organization, if you look at our workforce, it mirrors our community. When I gather our employees for an all-employee meeting, which I do on a fairly regular basis, for 400 plus employees on a regular basis, I will tell you that it looks like the United Nations. And that is South Florida. It is a very diverse region. Our city is very diverse. Our employees are a diverse mix that represent the community, as does my management team. I described for you in some of the materials that I provided the racial and ethnic makeup of the members of my management team. That is by design. However, I will tell you that I don't hire to fill positions with people who are black or Hispanic or Caribbean or Cuban, whatever, however we describe them. I hire the best people for the job. I seek out the best people for the jobs in our organization, and I hire them based on qualifications. That's not to say that when we do a recruitment, we get candidates and we're satisfied. If we don't, we reach out into the community and hire in what I consider to be innovative ways, reaching into the private sector to find people that can fill roles in our organization that are not necessarily traditional government employees. And in doing so, I've been able to create, I think, an incredibly diverse, well-rounded, and amazingly intelligent management team that I've surrounded myself with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to ask you to describe your philosophy toward budgeting and fiscal sustainability, and tell us about the process you'd use to prepare the budget for us, and how would you incorporate the governing body, this commission's priorities in that budget.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kelly. That was a much shorter question.
Yeah, we needed to give you a break.
All right, so I am and have always been very much a fiscal conservative. All right, that's the way I live my life, and I've been successful that way. I learned that from my parents. That's just who I am and how I operate. As far as the city's finances are concerned, I believe in the city having a vision, and that the strategic plan, the goals and priorities, and the budget that supports that needs to be in concert with and working towards the community's vision. And I talk to our elected officials all the time about the fact that we don't build to a number, we build to a vision. Let me help you develop the vision for what you want your community to be, and we'll put the numbers to it. It may not be in 12 months or 24 months, that may not be attainable, but let us focus on the vision of the city. Let us take a long-term approach to accomplishing that vision, and let us build to the vision, not build to a number. That takes a lot of discipline from the elected officials and from senior management to to do that and to not rush. And the way that we do that and the way that we are accountable for it is when I became city manager, we went from doing yearly budgets, and don't misunderstand me. We have, you know, master plan, Tamarack, you know, 2040. We have financial projections. We have a 20-year capital improvement plan. We have all of those things. But what we never did was we budgeted for the year that was in front of our face. And we were successful with that, but it wasn't enough. And when I became city manager, I asked our elected officials to adopt 2-year budgets. All right, with the first year being 100% and the second year really being 95%, for the purposes of getting them to focus on the future. So for the first 3 years I was city manager, we adopted 2-year budgets, and that forced everybody to really begin to look at the future operationally, not just a plan, not just a guess or a projection, but really focus on the future operationally. We switched, after the first 3 years of doing that successfully, we switched to the 3-year budgets that we adopt today. And that really gives us a focus for our elected officials and my senior management, focusing on what are we going to be doing in 3 years? What are we going to be doing in 4 years? Where do we need to be? You know, what do we need to do to sustain our organization and sustain our community? And not just projections, not just plans, but really operationally, where do we need to be in the future? We keep our elected officials updated and in the loop on that by doing quarterly financial updates. Once a quarter, we sit down for an entire day and we go through our financial situation, where we are today, how our projections look, are we accurate, do we need to make adjustments, do we need to tweak the budget, do we need to tweak the financial plan, do we need to change course? Is our vision still the same? Have we modified the vision? Have things come up that weren't anticipated when we did the plan? Because as you know, things come up all the time. You guys have great ideas that have to happen now. My staff has great ideas that they think have to happen now. Things that weren't considered when we went through the budget process. By taking this approach, by using these tools, by keeping the elected officials informed and having everyone understand that there's accountability in that process, not only have we been able to be successful financially, not only is Tamarack in the best financial position it's ever been in today, but we've been able to develop substantial reserves which the Commission has been able to designate and allocate for specific purposes, including dealing with some of those things that come up on the fly. Not everything that comes up on the fly gets dealt with the reserves. Some of them have to be said no to. Some of them have to be put into the budget process and prioritized again. But some things that come up are too important to wait. And you have to have the financial flexibility to be able to deal with that. You also have to have the discipline to know that you can't do it each and every time. That's how I've been successful over the years. Building an organization that is financially viable, that is financially stable, and that can be sustained for the long term. One last thing I'll add about that: the city of Tamarack just issued $20 million of debt, which is a relatively small amount of debt. But we hadn't issued debt in 4 or 5 years because we typically try to do as much pay-as-you-go capital as we can. But we had some debt that was retiring. We had some capital needs that we had the opportunity to finance. So we issued $20 million worth of debt. I share that with you because we went to the rating agencies in April, and we talked with the rating agencies about where we'd been during the recession, where we'd been during the real estate meltdown, where we are today, and the tools that we have in place. And we were able to get the rating agencies to increase our bond rating from AA to AA+. All right, which for a city our size is probably better than we should expect. You know, everybody wants to be a AAA credit. Some cities should be a AAA credit. Tamarack is not, I don't think, ever going to be a AAA credit. It's just not everything that needs to be there to sustain that level of excellence isn't there, and it won't be there. It's just not attainable. But a AA+ is exceptional for us, And I think that that helps put a point on my financial management. Yeah.
Welcome back this afternoon.
Thank you.
So there are times when we all must deal with conflict. So tell us how you've dealt with an adversarial, either citizen, coworker, employee, or elected official like us, and how you managed the conflict. Explain the steps that you went through to resolve the issue.
So, you know, conflict, as much as we don't like it, is inevitable. And certainly if you're a city manager and you're doing your job, you're leading, it can tend to lead to some conflict from time to time, whether with citizens, whether with your employees, whether with your bosses. And I've experienced all three. You know, in terms of conflict, let me give you some community conflict. Tamarack is a great community, but where we suffer is with our schools. Our schools are not as good as they need to be. Schools in Florida are done on a county-wide basis. So we have 14 public schools that serve the city of Tamarack, only 3 of which are in our community. And they are not great schools. They are not even good schools. They are just average schools for the most part. And it is my belief that our community deserves better. After years of trying to work with the school district to improve those schools, I sat with our elected officials and I launched an initiative to bring a charter school to the city of Tamarack to serve the 6 through 12 grades. Charter schools are not new in Florida. I know they're not new in Michigan either. Some people have fond feelings for them, some people don't. But in our case, we needed an alternative to the public schools that were serving the city of Tamarack. And I proposed to construct a 6 through a middle school, high school in the city of Tamarack, and to do it in the middle of our sports complex. The city of Tamarack has a large sports complex. The reason for doing it in the middle of the sports complex is because our sports complex goes unused from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. It just sits there. And one of the challenges with charter schools is providing an environment that not only provides for the education, but provides for well-rounded opportunities, which includes the band, which includes sports teams, and they need facilities in which to conduct those activities. So it was an ideal spot. And my elected officials were not willing to lead that initiative. They were willing to go along, but they needed someone to be out front, and they said, Mike, if you want to do this, you need to get out front. And I did. And while it meant something to the school-aged folks in our community, the seniors in our community were not happy about it because many of them lived in neighborhoods around the sports complex. They didn't want the traffic, they didn't want the noise, they didn't want those things. And we had a very challenging engagement process with them. I did it right. I went to them first. I laid it out for them. I had 1,000 hostile seniors screaming at me in one of our community centers. That did not stop me. I continued forward, and the elected officials continued to be supportive. The reason why we were not able to do that was because we needed to get a state law changed, which we had support for, and it just so happened that that year the state legislature walked out on our governor in the middle of the legislative session, and when they did, every bill that was pending died, including ours. And truly with it died our charter school because the political will evaporated at that point, and that was done. How did I overcome that with the community? We have community meetings in those neighborhoods all the time, and I made it a point to go right back into those neighborhoods as the city manager and say, I understand you didn't agree with me about these things, but I'm back, and here are the things that I need you to agree with me about. Here are the things that we're doing for your community going forward. That's with the community. I'll skip the employees because that was a long answer. We have struggled for years with a very old land development code that was adopted in 1971 that doesn't give proper consideration to many land uses, including churches, auditoriums, houses of assembly, any number of things. We literally 3 weeks ago adopted located in appropriate places in a better way than our old code did. However, to get from the old code to the new code, we issued what we call a zoning in progress, which is a moratorium on new churches. It was in place for a very short period of time, only 2 months, and it was done to allow flexibility for these churches to come in under the new code in what we thought was a better way in the long term. This was not necessarily understood by everyone, but we did a good job of communicating with the clergy in our community, and so there wasn't a huge outcry. There was from a very small group, and it led to a very heated city commission meeting. And one of my commissioners is a pastor, and he was very, very upset. And in getting upset, he let the commission know how upset he was. He let me know how upset he was. And when he didn't get his way, he left the dais. At this particular meeting, we didn't have enough commissioners when he left to have a physical quorum in the room, and so the meeting came to an end. Our mayor was quite upset about this, stormed off the dais, dragging myself and the city attorney with him, and he was, quite upset about this meeting because it was already late and we still had 3 or 4 other land use issues that people had been waiting for several hours to deal with. So I went into the commissioner's office and I asked him if he was going to rejoin the meeting or if we were through. And before he could answer me, our mayor appeared and was quite agitated, and said some things that he shouldn't have. And the two of them got into it to the point where the city attorney and I had to physically separate them. It was a very, very uncomfortable circumstance for both the city attorney and myself, one that I hope that I never have to repeat. And it got worse because after that, they both alleged that one another had engaged in racist behavior and anti-Semitic behavior, and it was quite hostile. And as the city manager, I have to deal with these gentlemen. I can't leave. I have to deal with them, and so that situation is still ongoing. It's kind of an ugly circumstance, but for my commissioner, who's the pastor, he was upset, and how he and I resolved that was when we adopted the code that was to the benefit truly of the churches. He finally understood that as the city manager, what I was recommending was the right thing for the community and the right thing for the churches. And he didn't necessarily believe that until I made the recommendation to the mayor and to the commission, until they accepted it. And so when that happened, all was right with the world again, at least on that issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones?
Aren't we just happy that we have a peaceful existence here on the dais?
I was trying to figure out who I
Yes, we do.
was getting a fight with.
Yeah.
Right, well, you know what? Maybe West Michigan Nice does have its good side.
Right. Michael, if a... Go ahead.
So you won't have no problem under me.
Right. Michael, if a single member or 2 members of the city commission approached you with a request or position you knew to be contrary to that of the majority, how would you deal with the situation while maintaining a working relationship with that individual or individuals?
So, that is a great question, and it's one that just about every city manager gets asked during the interview process. It's also something that happens on, I don't want to say a regular basis, but it happens, and I've been confronted with that numerous times in my career. And I understand why. It's important for elected officials to get done the things that they want to get done. And as the city manager, it's important for me that you make policy and that I run the organization. And in order to do that effectively, I have to take direction from a majority of the commission, not 1, 2, or 3. And so when commissioners approach me with things that are contrary to either the direction or the philosophy of the whole, of the majority, the simple answer is I say no. But the reality is I say no, but. And I typically work with them to try to figure out how it is we accomplish what they want with the support of the other elected officials. Because you may need something, you may want something, it may be contrary to the direction of the commission. That doesn't change the fact that you either need it or want it. And typically, if it's a need or a want, it's not just going to go away because I say no. So in order to maintain that good working relationship with all of you and help you be successful and accomplish the things that you need to accomplish for your constituents and for the community, I have to figure out ways to solve that problem with you, get it back to the commission, and get it in a form that can be supported by a majority. And that's typically how I go about helping commissioners accomplish the things that they need to do for their constituents and for the community.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Michael, have you thought about leaving your present position prior to this opportunity? If yes, what held you back from doing so? And if no, why now? Why Grand Rapids?
So that's an excellent question. And it's a question that, frankly, I've asked myself for the last several years. I love where I work. It's an honor and a privilege to be the city manager in Tamarack. It's a great job. It's a great community. In spite of what I just described for you with a couple of my elected officials, they're great people to work for, and they're very supportive of me. Obviously, they all know I'm here. They've all texted me and said good luck. They support me professionally, and they want to see me succeed. They want to see what's right for me and what's right for my family. I'm at a point in my career where I want a greater challenge. I'm at a point in my career where I believe that I can contribute on a higher level in a community that is going places that the city of Tamarack either can't go or isn't prepared to go to. Grand Rapids is one of those places. I've only applied for 2 city managers' jobs in the last 3 years. One of which was Tacoma, Washington, where I was a finalist. The other is here in Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is a community that I hold in high esteem. I put it on a very high rung of the ladder, just like Tacoma, Washington. For those of you who have spent any time in the Pacific Northwest, you know how innovative, how great the Seattle metropolitan area is. And I hold Tacoma right up there with that metropolitan area. I'm sorry, whole Grand Rapids with that. Grand Rapids is a place that I've been visiting for the last 25 years. I went to school with guys that were from here. They couldn't wait to get back to GR. As soon as they graduated from the University of Detroit, they made their way back here. They've made their lives here. At least 4 of them still live here. And it's a place that I visited for a while. It's the kind of a place where my family could call home. It's the kind of place where I would love to raise my children. What I've seen here from the community, the pride that is exhibited here in Grand Rapids, it's amazing to me as a city manager candidate. I've spoken with a lot of people in the last 2 days. Not one single person has had a negative thing to say about the city of Grand Rapids. The passion, the pride, the love for this community, I think it's amazing. That's why I want to be here. I believe that, as a city manager, my job is to bring people together, to unite people. And to do that, we talk about the things that we love. We talk about the things that unite us. We don't talk about the things that divide us. I haven't heard anyone talk about things that divide the community of Grand Rapids, only things that unite us. I'd like to be a part of that. That's why I'd like to be here.
Would you live in the city? Or Santa Cruz Public School?
Absolutely. Your public schools are significantly better than the public schools in South Florida.
Very good. I'm pretty proud.
Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I have another lengthy question, so
Okay.
I won't read mine.
I'll listen carefully.
It's not as long as Commissioner Moody's, though. It is likely the new city manager will have an opportunity in the next several years to fill a number of key positions on the city's leadership team because of expected retirements. How would you create a team that possesses a shared vision and strategic plan to realize that vision?
Okay. You know, that's a great question, and I know that it's a great concern to all of you that such a large portion of your municipal workforce is probably going to be retiring and leaving service with the city in the next several years. As the new city manager, one of the things that I would have to do first is to really sit down with the existing management team and really understand where the talent is in the organization today, and then do a pretty thorough and extensive assessment for myself of that talent and decide, you know, where we can pull from within the organization, what opportunities we can create for people who are here today. All right, understanding that not every one of those positions will be able to be filled from people within the organization. Again, I like to do national recruitments. I think that the city of Grand Rapids is a sophisticated organization, and as such can attract incredible talent from all over the country, and I would do that. However, that doesn't always ensure that you're going to get the best candidates for the job. And given the vibrant private sector that you have here in the Grand Rapids business community, given the vibrant not-for-profit and philanthropic sectors that you have here in the community, I would also look heavily to those sectors to recruit non-traditional employees into the city's executive management ranks. I would look for people who have, first of all, talent, second of all, the passion and the pride for the city of Grand Rapids that I believe exists, to bring them into the organization. Also, understanding the number of positions that are going to be vacated. I'm also going to look seriously at how necessary those positions are, how we can reorganize and restructure things to make better use of people's talents and better use of technology. As you know and as you've heard, the city's budget is good today, but what it looks like in 2 or 3 years without changes isn't great. And if we can't continue to support our organization, particularly the workforce and the people who do the work here and who make us all successful, who make us all look great, then we have some real challenges ahead of us. And so I'm going to look at it not only as a way to recruit new talent into the organization from all across the country, but also from right here in Grand Rapids, from the organizations that exist today that make this city great. And I'm going to look for opportunities to restructure within the workforce, to be more efficient, to be more lean, and then to create opportunities to reward the people that are here doing the work.
All right, I have a question about community and police relations. So
Sure.
That's been a priority of this body and this community for several years now. And so I'm curious if you could share with us a little bit about your any experience you have in building relationships between community and police, and if you came to our community, what are some ideas that you would have to continue the work that we're doing?
Okay. I will, let me try to keep this as concise and as simple as possible. When it comes to police relations in the community, simply put, the community must trust the police department. That is one of the building blocks of the foundation for everything that we do. Trust with the police is vital. And we can talk all about community policing, we can talk about a lot of things. None of that matters if they don't trust us. All right, and so my experience in building trust has come from 17 years in Tamarack of creating one of the safest communities in Broward County. a community that is surrounded by pockets of crime in other cities, but not in ours. We have one of the lowest crime rates in Broward County. We have one of the lowest crime rates in Broward County because we have an engagement policy and philosophy in our community where we are out in the neighborhoods at every single association meeting, homeowners meeting, business association meeting. Our presence is dramatic. If there's going to be a civic meeting or an association meeting, one of our police representatives is there. The same goes with our fire department. It isn't just about police, it's about public safety, and it's about establishing that type of trust. When there is an issue with law enforcement, we deal with it. We deal with it directly, we communicate with the community, we are honest. One of the most difficult things that I had to deal with as a city manager was we had 2 police officers gunned down in cold blood in an ambush at a traffic stop. Brian Tefford died. I'm sorry. Brian Tefford died. Chris Carpacci survived, and they were gunned down by 3 Haitian immigrants with an assault rifle, and there was a countywide manhunt that ensued, and the tensions escalated immediately. We dealt with that in the community by communicating clearly with the community, by making sure that people understood that people are innocent until proven guilty, and that the killers needed to be apprehended and that they needed to have justice. And that's what happened. More recently, we dealt with a shooting where an unarmed Haitian man who was taking compact discs from unblocked cars was shot and killed in the driveway of a homeowner. And in the same way, we communicated to the community what happened. We communicated to the community that we need not take matters into our own hands, that in those cases, we need to call the police. We need to call 911, that gun violence is not acceptable, and that we really need to think about how we go about confronting situations like that. The young man who was killed was not necessarily a good man. He had a long record, not of violent crime, but of theft. And I would tell you that under the circumstances, he did not deserve to die in that driveway that morning. You know, Florida has stand your ground laws, and whether they're right or wrong is not for me to decide, though that's the law. The state's attorney makes decisions about how we prosecute these things. But in our community, we communicate a message that, you know, says, look, we don't support gun violence. We need, you know, to let the police do their jobs. We need to allow the criminal justice system to do its job. And you know, really, our biggest issue with police is that our community wants to see more of them. You know, we've been able to establish a level of trust by being there and being honest, owning our mistakes, being accountable for the things that have not gone well, and some things have not. But also being there for the community, having a presence, being active in civic associations, being active, being seen in the parks, you know, being seen in the schools, and really working with the community with a common goal of making sure that our neighborhoods are always safe and that our people feel well protected. And we've been successful with that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Moody, do you have another question?
Yes, I was going to ask you to tell us about a time when you had to deal with some difficult leadership, but you've already explained some of that. But I would ask you this question. What was your expectations of your commissioners at the time that your mayor and your preacher, minister, pastor had their confrontations? What was your expectations to get other people to understand that there is a different type of objective that needs to occur?
Okay, that is a good question, and actually one that I've had to deal with, because, you know, in our community, people were confused by that. when you make accusations against one another of racist behavior or anti-Semitic behavior, and there are no secrets in local government. All right, that's not staying within the confines of four walls of an office, and it was out and it was in the community within 24 hours. It was on Facebook, it was on social media, and in terms of communicating my expectations to both of those gentlemen, I communicated to them that I understood why they were upset. I communicated to them that neither one of them were right, and that in terms of how we communicate and deal with one another, even when we're that upset, that's not acceptable for any of us, and not as public servants, not as servant leaders. That's not how the community can view us. That's not that does not instill that doesn't help with support in the community. That is not good leadership. And those are difficult conversations to have with your bosses. Okay? But for me as the city manager went beyond that, because all of a sudden everyone in all of the community leaders wanted to know what really happened. And unfortunately there were only two people to witness it, myself and the city attorney. And both of us were asked what happened. And I think both of us were honest with people in the community about what we saw and what we heard. And that's all that we can do. In order for me as the city manager, in order for our city attorney to maintain credibility, we have to be honest. We have to be honest whether we like it or not. And I will tell you that neither one of those elected officials necessarily cared for the honesty. But I can look both of them in the eye and tell them that I was honest with the community, honest with people who inquired about what happened that evening. Same goes for our employees. I told you, we have a very mixed, diverse group of employees, and many of those employees see our pastor as the future of our community, and we're very concerned that he would make anti-Semitic remarks and that the mayor would make racist remarks to him. To our employees, I had the same answer, which was to be honest and to say to them, this is what I heard. I was there. This is what I heard. This is me being honest with you. And for our employees, that's what they've grown to expect from me. I'm proud to sit here and say they know that I'm going to answer them honestly about things, even when it's hard for me to do. But I think that's all we can do, is be honest about those circumstances. Not point fingers, not place blame, but to be honest about it. And ultimately, in response to that situation that occurred, I actually brought in 2 consultants. We had a day-long retreat with the city commission after that happened. The mayor, the elected officials, myself, the department directors, we sat through a day-long program about how we better deal with one another, because at that point we needed it.
Thank you.
So commissioners, we probably have time for one more question, if you have a burning one that you want to ask, and then I'll turn the floor over to Michael for final comments. So any final questions that you'd like to ask, commissioners? No? All right. So now we'll give you an opportunity for final comments.
Great. Listen, again, it is really, it's an honor and a privilege to be here, to be in front of you to answer these questions. I want to be your next city manager. I feel good about this because not only do I feel like I'm a great candidate, but you have 4 other great candidates to choose from, and as a mayor and elected officials, that's what you want. And so my hat is off to you for creating a process that got you 5 great candidates to choose from. As your city manager, I will be a servant leader. I will put service above self, and I will be a man for others. And the organization that I lead will reflect those values in every way, every day in the community. That is my pledge to you. You know, I always had great feelings about Grand Rapids, and those feelings have been nothing but reinforced in the time that I've been here. Again, I've never been through a process like this where so many people, so many different people in a community demonstrated so much pride and so much passion for the city that they work in, the city that they live in, the city where they serve. I'd like to be a part of that. I feel like, again, we can rally this community around the things that unite us, and that by doing that we can deal with and overcome some of the obstacles that I've heard all of you talk about. The social equity issues, the affordable housing issues, the engagement issues that exist in the community today. You know, I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to be your next city manager. I believe that the city of Grand Rapids today is a great city. Not good, it's already great. I believe that this is a city that is on the cusp of truly being world-class. I think that you have an opportunity to take this community to an entirely new level, to raise the bar, to make this a world-class community for the people who live here, for the businesses that invest here, and for people who visit the city of Grand Rapids. And I just want to reinforce to you, I hope you understand the reputation that the city of Grand Rapids has nationally. I'm the president of the Florida City County Management Association this year. It's an organization of 1,000 city management professionals in the state of Florida. When I was preparing to come up here to interview, I had to send an email out to a lot of people in that organization letting them know what I was doing, making sure that they didn't read about it or hear about it from someone else, but that they heard about it from me. And I got some incredible feedback from some of the people that you know, I work for and I represent in that organization. But what I also got was some really incredible feedback about how great people perceive the city of Grand Rapids to be. This is from a bunch of city managers in Florida, all right, who all said to me, what a great opportunity, what a great city, doing so many great things there. We're looking at things that are going on in Grand Rapids and we're considering them for ourselves. So as you know, local officials, whether elected or appointed, sometimes we get in our own little bubble and we focus on the things that we're doing and we don't necessarily see outside of it. And if you're not seeing outside of it and seeing how great Grand Rapids is and how great Grand Rapids is perceived nationally, what a great reputation you have, please take a look, because it's outstanding. And as a city management professional for almost 25 years now, I'd like to be a part of that going forward. I believe that I can help you raise the bar. I believe that I can help make this a world-class city. All of the pieces are in place. The puzzle just needs to be put together. You've got great partners all throughout this community. The city needs to do its part. It looks like today that it is. It looks like it's on that path. I'd like to lead it there. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to leave each of you with just a hope.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene in here at 3:06 on that. Hello, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. All right. Oh, I don't know if we have any bottled water. I know we have a pitcher there with some clean glasses.
Yeah. Right up here.
Thank you. All right, are we all settled? Okay. All right, well, welcome. I'll kind of tell you the process for this part of the interview. We're gonna do round robin questions. I'll start. Yeah, you can move that out of the way.
I get confused.
So I'll start and then I'll turn to my colleagues and we'll just go around. We'll see how many questions we can get through, and then when we have about 10 minutes left, I'll see if any commissioners have final burning questions, and then we'll give you time for closing remarks and comments. I haven't done a very good job at this, but I'll try to remember to hit the timer just to give you a sense of how much time you have with your questions. It's not necessarily saying you have to stop talking when it's up, but just to give you a sense of timing. So, all right? Okay. So I'll start with the first question, and that is, describe how you would ensure accountability of city departments, and what methods do you believe to be the most effective in motivating, developing, and improving the performance of employees that you supervise?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for this opportunity. I think accountability begins first with alignment. The organization has to be aligned with the vision of the commission and the priorities. So that begins with me making sure that I am clear on establishing the priorities of the commissioners through our vision, our values, through our budget that the city manager would propose. And that alignment continues to aligning the work of the operating departments to make sure that everyone is focused on the priorities. That alignment with the commissioner's vision begins with what our constituents throughout this community prefer in terms of their city government. And so as we begin holding people accountable, it's accountable through the priorities that are established by the commission based on the feedback from community, but also reflected in the work plans and the budget proposals of the departments, as well as the performance expectations of individuals, both executives and throughout the organization. So that alignment is from top down, but begins with community. To ensure that there is accountability, there has to be clear goals and expectations on achievable outcomes. And so many times within government, we focus on inputs and we're measuring things that really don't matter. And so the accountability has to begin with what specifically things that we want to achieve. We are doing that in Austin. We have revitalized our strategic planning process, our budgeting process, where we're budgeting for outcomes, looking at specific performance metrics. We're measuring thousands of things every year as an organization, and sometimes the important things could get lost, so we had to reprioritize. What are those things we really want to focus on? And for us, it was mobility, it was housing, it was affordability, and so we had specific metrics. And as budget proposals came forward, we aligned those proposals based on what outcomes would, what things would move the needle, and we hold departments accountable for those proposals and performances.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Rudy?
Mark, I have a long question here for you.
Sure.
Grand Rapids is part of a select group of cities from around the country working to develop innovative strategies to achieve racial equity and advance successful outcomes for all of its citizens. The city manager is a key member of the city's project team, and it is critical that that person selected be able to provide leadership to this project. Could you please explain why your experience, track record, and approach would make you an ideal candidate to help lead this project team in developing a new set of strategies to address equity, inclusion, disparities, and pursue hiring practices that allow the city's employees base to better reflect the makeup of the community and to provide an enhanced opportunity for career growth within the organization?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. I'm very familiar with the work around racial equity and the expectation of the city manager to be part of that initiative and co-leading that effort. I was, in my current capacity at the City of Austin, I helped to provide executive leadership around our inauguration of the Equity Office. And you mentioned in your question that there was a group of cities that were part of that effort. Austin was one, along with Grand Rapids, Philadelphia, Albuquerque, and Louisville. We were a part of that cohort. As a matter of fact, that's how my introduction to Grand Rapids occurred. Back in 2016, the cohort cities had visited each other, and I had the opportunity to come to Grand Rapids, and I also had the opportunity to be host to Grand Rapids when that same team and others came to Austin. So I understand the importance of racial equity and improving disparities. I think my role would be to gain a further appreciation of the historical significance of the cause of disparities. I think that's where the work has to begin. You have to begin understanding how it all started. Our country has a history that we're often, there's many aspects of our country we're proud of, but that part of our country's history is sometimes painful to revisit, but we have to revisit it. We have to know the context, understanding what happened then in terms of the migration of African Americans and other people of color to Grand Rapids because of economic and employment opportunities. Created some opportunities for some, but the beneficiaries of those opportunities are not always the ones who were participating in the early labor of that development at that time. I think today, looking at the context, there are many people that are experiencing disparities in several factors. Housing, in terms of those who are can't afford to live in market rate housing. You have disparities in the unemployment rate where people of color experience vastly increasing higher levels number of unemployment than people who are not of color. You also have disparities of health care. And so my job would be to understand not just the race as a factor, but look at the statistics and the data, and based on the data, determine whether or not we as a community are investing resources properly, engaging the right people, developing the right work plans that allow us to improve those racial disparities. I have done diversity work, not only City of Austin, I did that previously in the city of Fort Worth, where I was the champion of our diversity and inclusion plan then. It was not so much focused on equity at the time, but in terms of just workplace diversity, making sure that we have cultural competence in every employee, even though our city may not always reflect the community at every level of organization. I think there's a level of competence that everyone should have an appreciation, despite how they look, that everyone should be able to appreciate differences in the people that we serve. And we understand that it is the differences that help us to become a stronger community, and having the differences of opinion, differences of perspective allows us to make sure that we're able to serve all of our community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kelly?
Thank you and welcome, Mark. Welcome to Grand Rapids. So my question is this: describe your philosophy toward budgeting and fiscal sustainability. Tell us about the process that you think you would use to prepare our budget, and how you would incorporate the City Commission's priorities into this process.
I think I may have alluded to some of that earlier in my earlier response, so forgive me for getting ahead of the question. But the same principle. I think it begins with a current state of where are we now, and a forecast of our financial future, fiscal future, based on prioritization. In my experience, it's been a 5-year financial forecast, looking at what are the cost drivers that we anticipate that we have currently, and what are those cost drivers that we anticipate in the future, and determining whether or not we can make sustainable investments in the budget, because there's an ongoing cost once you bake, if you will, programs in the budget. And there needs to be a determination of which investments are better made as ongoing costs, and which investments are better made as one-time costs. particularly on capital projects that where you may have total cost of ownership that will require the city to invest more in future costs than just the first year. And so lots of times managers and cities balance the budget by not making hard decisions because they know the hard decisions are 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and the initial project is just in the planning phase, and that's a lower cost, but the actual project cost hits in years later. And so it's important to know what those future costs are, both in your estimate your operational costs as well as your capital budgets. I think the other reality is that you know, as a government, we provide mostly services, and a lot of the cost of government is labor costs. Employee wages, employees' benefits, pensions. And so I think one of the things that I have done is make sure that, to the extent possible, that we can create sustainable budgets in terms of personnel costs. And I try to look at the budget holistically on the employee side and from a total rewards perspective, looking at the compensation, the benefits, and then post-employment retirement benefits as well. And we know that of all three, what has gotten a lot of attention in the past have been the last two, the retirement benefits, the pension, and the health care. And I think a lot of effort has been made in reference to the OPEB liability in this community. I know that there are additional tiers and plans and things that have been done in terms of defined contribution plans that are put in place. And I think there continues to be opportunity to make progress on the second lever in terms of employee health care. We know the cost of health care continuously increases because of the use of technology, the refinement of prescription drugs, but there's also an opportunity to mitigate costs. I have done that successfully in my career as a public administrator. As a matter of fact, right now the City of Austin is looking at its second year of no cost increase on its health care benefit, and we have a $250 million plan that covers almost 30,000 lives. And one of the ways that we have mitigated that cost is by encouraging employee wellness. When I first arrived in Austin, we had less than 10% of our employees participating in the wellness program. Now we have almost 50% of our employees participating in that, and we're rolling it out to spouses and retirees. And we try to do it in a very educating way to make them understand how to address their chronic health and as well as just being more active and knowing their numbers. And we found it to be successful. The other way that we have also maintained costs is to focus on employee safety and making sure that there's not excessive cost drivers from excessive claims and liabilities and accidents. And so we've been pretty good about promoting a culture of workplace wellness and safety. And I think if you manage those last two levers, the first lever in terms of the compensation and pay increases, what we try to show employees, if we can save money on the cost of benefits, there's an opportunity for more reward and base pay.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Nice to see you again.
Yep.
So there are times when we all must deal with conflict. This arena is where some of that happens. If you could just tell us about a time where you've dealt with an adversarial citizen, coworker, employee, or elected official, and how you managed the conflict. Please explain the steps you went through to resolve the issue.
Can we turn the tape off now? Conflict is inherent because we all have different perspectives, and not every conflict is bad. It's good to have conflicting opinions, the diversity of ideas. I think conflict is managed unhealthy when it becomes personal. It becomes personality-based, or it becomes biased for any other reasons, or if it's just such strong differences of opinion that people can't have a healthy discussion about it. That's what democracy is. Democracy is about having healthy debate and conflict. And so I welcome diversity of ideas and opinion, and I understand that there is conflict both in sometimes even among elected officials. There are different opinions. And so my approach is just to remain approachable, to be open for dialogue, and particularly if there is an occasion that I'm unaware of, that there is something that was misunderstood, often try to offer clarification. If I know that I may wear the title of city manager, but I'm not the city wizard. I'm not perfect at everything, and so there will be times of making mistakes. And I think the best thing to do whenever you do that is to own up to it early and try to move forward. And so I think being honest and having candor, but having it in a respectable way, is the best way to have difficult conversations, because just ignoring it or acting like it doesn't exist only sets up a stage for heightened conflict down the road. So I believe in being open and honest in my communication.
Mark, if a single member or two members of the City Commission approached you with a request or position you knew to be contrary to that of the majority, how would you deal with the situation while maintaining a working relationship with that individual or individuals?
Number one, I think if it's a discussion, I'm always open to the discussion and hearing. Obviously, I think it's important for the city manager to be open and to hearing from all of his or her bosses on the commission. But if it's a request that the body, the majority of the commissioners have already decided on by vote, I think I would have to be sensitive to the fact that as much as I'd like to engage in a dialogue, I can only do what the majority of the commissioners have already voted and agreed upon. Now, if it's an issue where it's a request, but there's a difference of a discussion and opinion, and the will of the governing body has not been determined, I think it's always good to provide information. But if I'm providing it to two members on a controversial issue, I think I'm obligated as city manager to let those two members know respectfully that this is information that might be beneficial to the entire commission. And so it doesn't seem like that I am playing any type of favorites or bias to any commissioners when I know that it's an issue that's important to all members. So I think it depends on the context of the issue, but for the most part, I would try to provide information if it were requested to the two, certainly inform the majority of the, all of the commissioners if it were something that was very controversial.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mark. Had you thought about leaving your present position prior to this opportunity? If yes, what held you back? And if no, why Grand Rapids? Why now?
So, good question. Have I thought? I think every employee thinks about opportunities in the future. If I could revise the question or respond to it in this way, have I attempted to leave? I have been in my current job in the city of Austin for 9 years, and prior to that I was in the city of Fort Worth for 14 years. And so I am not an employee who's on the circuit. I'm not just looking for the next better and greater opportunity every time. I think, if I can be just very frank, Austin is going through transition at this time. We have a new city manager that is come in, and he is beginning to evaluate the organization and assemble his executive team, and has, quite frankly, asked all of the assistant city managers, there's 5 of us that help to manage an organization of 14,000 employees, there's 5 of us, he's asked all of us to reapply for our jobs as part of his realignment of the organization. And this is a process that he's indicated that would take place over a year's time period in terms of evaluating the talent that he has around him. That's a very unique transition. It's one that you typically see in presidential moves, where for the end of the term the new president brings in a new cabinet, gubernatorial offices, even in strong mayor forms of government. But very unfounded. I've not seen that until this moment within city government. Having said that, my consideration of this opportunity began even prior to the city manager's announcement. As I mentioned earlier, my familiarity with Grand Rapids started a couple of years back with the work on racial equity, and the discussion of the second round of interviews happened prior to the city manager's announcement. So I had been considering the opportunity. Timing be it as it may, I think now is it's even more important for me to consider a realistic opportunity, being realistic about the opportunity, but not just because of what's happening in Austin. I am not running from Austin. I am coming to Grand Rapids. There are a whole lot of other places that I believe that I can be competitive with and compete for the chief executive officer of a municipality. And so I am coming. I could have considered many other places closer to Austin, but I am coming to Grand Rapids, looking at the uniqueness of the opportunity, where my experiences have been, the experiences that I've had, the similarities between the communities, the growing communities, the challenges that are presented, the lessons learned that I've had in Austin, both positively and the things that we learned the hard way that hopefully I could help this community avoid, the opportunity to promote inclusion in this community. I believe it's something that my life experiences have been tailor-made, and I just believe I'm purposely positioned for this opportunity, and believe I've been called for such a time as this.
Quick follow-up. If you're appointed to be city manager, will you live in the city of Grand Rapids? And if you have children, would you consider sending them to Grand Rapids Public Schools?
That's a good question. And I want to answer it this way. My oldest daughter, so I have two kids. My oldest daughter is finishing her senior year in high school. So I think that's a very sensitive time for transition. And so my plan, should I be offered the job, is to have the family transition to Grand Rapids to join me after my daughter graduates, and certainly my youngest daughter, we would love to have her as part of the school system here.
And you ready? And you ready for the snow?
I have to get ready. I have to get ready. I have to get ready. But I am ready for the challenge. I'm ready for the occupational challenges. I'm ready for environmental challenges. I'm ready for the community challenges. I am a person who has never backed down from any challenge or opportunity. So yes, I look forward to coming.
Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I too have a lengthy question, so I'll just read it straight from the paper. Not as lengthy as Commissioner Moody's, but still lengthy nonetheless. It is likely the new city manager will have an opportunity in the next several years to fill a number of key positions on the city's leadership team because of expected retirements. How would you create a team that possesses a shared vision and strategic plan to realize that vision?
Well, let's say I probably would not ask everyone to reapply for their positions. I would begin by getting to understand the talent that's around me, because I'm coming to a new city with unique challenges. I know a lot of things about public administration, but I don't know everything. I don't know everything about Grand Rapids. And obviously you have done some great things, because this is a world-class city that people do talk about in terms of the kind of collaborations, the public-private partnerships, the quality of life that it's known for, the opportunities for redevelopment. I mean, there are a lot of good things that are going on, and for those good things to occur, there are good people within this organization, very talented people that are making it happen. So I need to understand and appreciate the talent that's around me. Having said that, there's opportunities. I heard some of the commentary earlier about the retention issues that are plaguing many communities, and the competition for talent, especially when you start bringing in high-tech companies and people from the medical profession. You're starting to compete with the very business environment that you're creating. And so I think there will be natural opportunities to, as attrition occurs, to ensure that we have the right people in the right place. I think there are, as you mentioned, a number of key vacancies that may exist or will be existing. I met the department directors and I heard several people say acting, and so there'll be an opportunity to assess whether or not that we have the right talent, the right kind of people in the right place. But I think, you know, I would not come in, I don't think, if this was a city that was in financial crisis, if this was a city that was plagued by media attention and scandal, where you need rapid disruption and change right away, I think I would have a sense of urgency about moving in that direction sooner than later. But that's not the sense I get. I understand that there are priorities, not to say that there won't be changes, but I think there's a way of engaging the organization and engaging the community to make sure that the change happens appropriately and happens in a way that makes the organization better as a result of it. And so I think just coming in and being very deliberate and intentional about what I do and what I do, because I want to come in and I want to be able to build trust. Trust among the commissioners, trust among the organization, trust among labor, trust among the community, and I think it takes time to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Mark, you may know that we've been spending a lot of time and energy working towards improving and strengthening community and police relations. So I'm just curious if you want to share a little bit about maybe some work you've done in the past in that area, and then what potentially you would do if you came to Grand Rapids.
So right now we're in a very unique position in Austin. We are revisiting our model for police community oversight. We have a citizens review panel that is advisory to the city manager, that advises him on post-incidents, critical incidents that occur in the police department, whether it's use of force, arrests, or even, unfortunately, if there are officer-involved shootings. They provide recommendations, both to the city manager and police chief, on how to improve future actions and also feedback on investigations that occur. There's been some dissatisfaction from some of the members of the community, and as I think it's part of this national conversation about police-community relations, of how to improve the effectiveness of police and community interactions. And so what we have been doing, we have been trying to work with community as well as our labor group, and sitting down, we have a team, various community stakeholders, representatives from the police union, police management, as well as city management and labor relations office, that is looking around the country at the best evidence-based practices for police oversight. Things that would lead to more transparency, trust, dialogue, and trying to get all of the tools that we see work in various communities, and there is no one community that's doing everything right. And so we have involved the citizens in helping us look across the country to provide a menu of recommendations that are just best practices. Whether or not those recommendations require funding, legislative changes, contractual changes and negotiations, those are to be determined. But in the spirit of just being innovative, we're trying to look at what are those practices. And I think as we present those collectively to the council, our city council will give us feedback on their preferences, and that is the direction that city management will go back and try to determine whether or not we need to negotiate this in the contract, whether there's separate ordinance provisions or resources, whether or not there needs to be increased investments in the police department, whether it's investments in training or actual officers that are needed on the street to increase their availability of having non-patrol time to do more community and police relations. And so Short answer is we are looking at that very model now, and I think there are opportunities to even improve upon the work that we've already done in other communities.
Great, thank you. Commissioner?
Mark, I have a very long question for you, longer than the first one. Could you tell us about a time when you provided leadership to accomplish a difficult project? And how did you set expectations and get others to meet the objectives?
Well, I think the project that I just described is probably as difficult as it comes, because you have a lot of competing interests, both from the police officers as well as the community. It's very emotional, and it's one that has history to it. We are still in flight, but I think the progress that we have made so far is having that open dialogue at the table, because typically what the community sees is the only time some see police officers is in a post-incident in which there's a negative outcome, and there's lots of emotions, dissatisfaction involved. And I think this process has really opened the dialogue between community and police. We have not agreed on everything as of yet, but I think there are lots of options that are on the table for us to move forward. I think there are other real major city problems. You never really solve them. You make progress. You make incremental progress. We have the issue of homelessness in the city of Austin. The goal is to eradicate homelessness, but we have over 2,000 homeless people, and it's part of the emerging growth of the area. Will we ever solve it? Ideally, we hope to, but will we make progress? And I think even in that endeavor, we made progress. We've identified the investments that the city is already making in homelessness, $30 million between all the different agencies that we have within our organization. And some of those investments are duplicative of what community-based organizations are already providing in terms of services. And so we began to address the issue and see whether or not there are other resources that can be redirected to helping us solve that issue of homelessness and having the conversations with community. And now our fiscal document, our budget document will start to reflect those reinvestments, those redirections of resources. So those are two major issues. I think that you never really completely resolve, but you do look to make progress as you try to resolve them.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. So my next question is around management and decision-making. How do you believe others would describe that, your management and decision-making style? And if we approached your current workplace, what would we hear about you in this regard?
Yeah, I think you would find that if you talk to the people that I work for and the people who work for me, that they would find that I'm results-oriented. Focused on outcomes and getting the job done, and I need to know what the target is. Where do we want the plane to land? Show me the outcome. Now, what I do believe is being approachable and flexible with my team and allowing them to be as creative as they can be, as innovative and imaginative as they can be within the resources that they have in order to reach that outcome. I believe that my job is fundamentally to point the direction, knock down barriers, and access resources to enable my team to accomplish those tasks. I believe in not only being approachable, I believe in having fun, because there's a quality of life outside of work, but there's a quality of work life, and people need to feel like they are part of a team, and there is some camaraderie. There's a sense of esprit de corps that allows people to feel good about the progress that we're making, and to celebrate as we make progress. And because there are many times where government, we're very transparent, very open, but there's not always an appreciation for what public servants do. And so I try to remind my employees that we have difficult jobs, but I try to let them know I appreciate the work that they do day in and day out. And so I think people will find that I am the kind of person, what you see is what you get. I am pretty straightforward and very approachable, but very practical.
Thank you.
I think you answered the question I was going to ask you, so I'll ask one a little off the script. But I just would love to hear about your experience with economic development, either in Austin or in Fort Worth.
Can you repeat it once more, please?
Your experience stimulating economic development, in those communities.
So, thank you. So one of the things that I'm responsible for in my portfolio as Assistant City Manager is the Convention Center. I am the executive that is not only oversees the Convention Center, but I also sit on our Convention and Visitors Bureau board, which is Visit Austin. I've recently been tasked with being the executive liaison with our Tourism Commission. So in addition to our Visitors Board, Visitors Bureau, we have a 11-member Tourism Commission. And so obviously tourism and visitors experience is a real big part of economic development. We have we have over 30,000 hotel rooms in the city of Austin, and we have opened right before South by Southwest, one of our biggest visitors experiences. It's like the Super Bowl for us in terms of the economic impact. Literally, the economic impact we have from that is similar to hosting a Super Bowl. We have people from over 130 countries coming to visit Austin, and ground zero for South by Southwest is the Convention Center. That's where the EDU and a lot of the education begins, but it expands beyond the Convention Center throughout all of downtown and much of the community. Right before this past South by Southwest, we opened up a 1,000-room hotel, the Fairmont, the largest hotel now in the city of Austin, and that hotel is connected by a bridge that lands right at the foot of the Convention Center. We have another hotel that is city-owned, which I also sit on the board of Austin Convention Enterprises, which owns the property and the building of the hotel, but we lease out and we manage. We have a partnership agreement, and the Hilton manages that for us. And so I've been very familiar with that aspect of economic development. I also have worked with all of the chambers, the Greater Austin Chamber, as well as the minority chambers on various efforts and initiatives around getting their input and inclusion on whether or not there's issues around public safety and events that are downtown, or talking about the selection of our next police chief and how he or she could make sure that the community remains safe and that businesses feel like they're protected.
Commissioner Jones?
Mark, if you could talk a little bit about your experience and approach in the areas of affordable housing as well as neighborhood revitalization.
Yes, a couple of things. One, primarily, in my responsibility for the city of Austin over the past 9 years, I have either been directly responsible for managing or indirectly responsible for overseeing our Equal Employment Fair Housing Office, which is our partnership with HUD as well as the EOC for any complaints around housing discrimination or employment discrimination. And so we want to make sure that housing is not only affordable, but it's also accessible by all residents in the community. I have also been very familiar with our efforts in the city of Austin to promote affordable housing for all of its residents. That's similar. The issues of growth, all the benefits of growth and economic prosperity that it brings also causes some challenges, and housing affordability is one of them, especially for those who are homeless. Our innovation office, in which I oversee, has been working very diligently with community and departments about creating solutions to our homeless initiative. But also, I've been part of community agencies, or assisting community agencies in overseeing programs for housing repair and weatherization initiatives, and allowing residents, low-income residents, to apply for subsidies to improve their housing conditions and repairs, to make sure that it remains livable, as well as they don't have to spend their income in making those kind of repairs, but are able to spend it on other quality of life initiatives. I think it's a challenging issue. There are many economic development tools that we are looking at implementing in the city of Austin, from looking at community land trust, looking at city-owned land where we already have land, and we can reduce the cost of housing by making that part of the investment, where we maintain ownership and have the development occur on that city-owned land, to ensure that it is affordable, and we take out the cost of the taxes, to looking at other incentives for incremental financing that would allow developers to freeze the taxes on the base value of the land and only pay on the incremental value of what is improved on, in mixed-use types of developments. And so we are looking at a variety of issues and tools, the same tools that that are being used here in Grand Rapids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yes, Mark. So, being from Texas, you guys don't have a state income tax. So I'm assuming you don't have a local income tax either.
We don't.
You do have a local sales tax, from what I can gather here, 1%.
I'm sorry?
You do have a local sales tax, that's 1%, it looks like. So I'm assuming that's a fairly significant portion of your city budget. But here in Grand Rapids, we predominantly rely upon local income tax as our primary funding mechanism for projects here in Grand Rapids. That's the majority of our budget. Our discretionary budget comes from those revenues. How do you see local income tax continuing to grow that? You know, we've always looked at trade-offs between property tax, giving property tax incentives, with the anticipation of income tax growth exceeding those, and that's our primary, driving force of our economy here. So how do you envision that working? How do you wrap your head around that, having never used that as a tool?
Yep. And I've familiarized myself in looking at the budget, and did notice, obviously, that is a different financing tool that you have here that we don't deploy in Austin. However, what does occur to me is that that income tax is contingent on the availability or the viability of employment here in the city. And so in order for the tax to be sustainable, you have to ensure that employment opportunities continue to grow, and making sure that the economy remains diverse, and that no one sector of the economy will cause a disruption in the workforce and put the revenue that comes from that income tax as risk. So it behooves places like Grand Rapids to begin to look at how diversified the economy is, and making sure that not only are there the traditional streams of employment opportunities, but are we doing things that allow innovative and entrepreneurial kind of efforts for business development and growth? Are we incubating new businesses and startups? Are we looking at ways to have emerging technologies and businesses relocate to the area? So working very closely with the chamber and other partners in terms of recruiting businesses to grow our citizen and employment base is very important. The other part, I think, in order to make sure that that income tax is sustainable, is as these jobs began to relocate to Grand Rapids, one of the things we did learn, excuse me, one of the things we did learn in Austin earlier on in our our economic, excuse me, early on in our economic growth in the 90s, we were getting companies, high-tech industries to relocate to Austin, and they were coming. They were coming with the jobs, they were doing the development. They were also bringing people across the country with them because the kind of jobs that they had were the high-tech jobs. And our local community, the job readiness was not there. And so in order to ensure that that income tax is sustainable, as these high-tech companies continue to locate to Grand Rapids, we have to partner with local institutions, community-based organizations to make sure that there's job readiness and training for people to take advantage of so they can be prepared for those opportunities. And as these ventures are proposed, and the thing is we need to be ready for what's coming in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, because when employers come to the city and they relocate, they start hiring people, 6 months a year before they're on site. And so the time to get those programs ready are not when the ribbon is cut and they're ready to open the door, but you got to start early in terms of the job readiness effort. And so taking just a little different perspective of the sustainability of it, I think it's very, very important. Obviously, it's the flexible kind of income that the residents are able to approve here in Grand Rapids. But I think that's only contingent as strong as the economic workforce is.
Thanks, sir. Can I ask one quick follow-up?
Yeah.
This is a little random, but it's Keep Austin Weird. So what makes Mark Washington weird?
What makes Mark Washington weird? Oh, probably I wake up at 3:30, 4 o'clock most mornings. For early start. That qualifies. That qualifies. I'm an early morning person.
What do you do at 4 a.m.?
That I really enjoy CrossFit. Really like to compete in CrossFit activities. We have our City Olympics that we have every year. I'm proud that I reinvigorated that, but I take pride in competing in CrossFit activities with some of the most fit employees that we have in the city, to include police and fire. But I also just like spending time with family, and that's not weird. That's normal. But nothing. I don't have anything uniquely weird.
2:30 in the morning.
If I did, Art should have found that out in the background check.
It's true. So, Commissioner Lanier, any final questions? Commissioners, any final questions before we give Mark an opportunity? Mark, I have one. In reading through your materials, one of the questions that you answered, you referred to implementing a fair chance hiring ordinance. Can you share with us what that is and what it was or is accomplishing?
Yeah. Speaking of working with businesses, one of the things we did in the city when I arrived, we first began looking at barriers for reentry into the workplace, and making sure that people who were previously incarcerated when they were released had opportunities to consider gainful employment opportunities without any barriers. Because I mean, the evidence shows, the data shows that if you're released and you're not employed, your opportunities for housings are reduced and the opportunities for recidivism increases. And so we began within our own organization looking at our policies and whether or not they were ex-offender friendly. And initially what we did was we removed the application of criminal history. I removed the question of criminal history from the application. then we began to assess what type of criminal histories do we require for various jobs. We know that there are some that are state licensed and mandated that you have to ask the question, you have to look at it every time, but there are others where one's criminal history may not be as relevant to the opportunity. And so in addition to what we did as an employer, last year, year before last, we began the initiative of ensuring that all employers in the city, it was a local effort, it wasn't state mandated, also had fair chance hiring opportunities to ensure that there was employment opportunities for people who were previously incarcerated. And so there was no requirement for hiring, there was no requirement to fund anything. It was simply ensuring that the questions about previous convictions were not asked on the applications, not required in recruitment materials, and that if someone did get that question prior to being offered the job, that they would have an opportunity to complain about that to our enforcement office. We had to do a lot of education to make sure that we were not telling residents we wanted them to hire people that would make their workplaces unsafe, our community unsafe. We did want to ask the question, but it's based on their capability. You want, after the job is offered is when it's most appropriate to know the criminal background.
Great, thank you. All right, Commissioners, any other questions? No. All right, so Mark, with that, we will give you an opportunity for final remarks.
I just want to express my appreciation for your consideration of my candidacy, and again, I know that this is one of the most important decisions that this commission will make because so much leadership is provided by the city manager to the entire workforce, but I do want you to know that I would be privileged and honored not to just come here for a job, but to be part of this community. Every place that I have worked, I have been part of community, and I see this as no different. Leaving Austin would be a very difficult thing for me because I have been there for 9 years. I've been part of that community, not just working in my public administrative job, but embedded and engaged in the community in terms of my affiliation in ministry. And so I do believe, though, that same level of engagement that I've had in Austin, that I've had in Fort Worth, I would have here. This seems to be a embracing community, a warming community, no pun intended on the weather, but a warming community in terms of the kind of kindness, philanthropy, the people that are here, and I look forward to being part of this community moving forward, if offered the job.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. All right, with that, we will end this interview.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
I know. Okay, so Commissioners, I'd like to propose a couple things. One, I would like to propose, I don't know, about a 20-minute break to give us an opportunity to, one, take a break. If you didn't get lunch, it'll give you a chance to eat. And then also, I know that Laura sent over a summary of the comments from last night, as well as a summary of the comments from today's community stakeholder reception. So you have all of those in your email inbox. So give you a chance to read through those. And then why don't we come back in here and we can have a discussion and talk about next steps after you have a chance to do that and have a little bit of break. So how about back in here at 4:25? Does that work?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. We're not adjourned. We're just taking a break, Madam City Attorney. Fill up my water. Commissioners, reconvene our conversation. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to look at the comments. I want to thank Laura again for being so fantastic in getting those summarized so quickly and getting those to us. She actually has been really great with this whole process and all of the details, as well as our city attorney and her office, so thank you. And then also Art's not in the room, but I want to thank Art as well. So we'll make sure we thank him again later for his work. So Commissioners, couple things. We have about an hour where we can have a conversation. Obviously, we went through a very robust process to get us where we are today. Had a number of really great candidates who were heavily vetted. Again, Art did a lot of that work even before bringing any of them forward to us. I believe we had 5 very strong candidates, a great pool of candidates with different strengths and really would bring their own style to the position. And so I'm going to open it up for conversation. We can do a couple things today. We talked about this when we announced the interview process. We can make a decision today if we feel strongly about a candidate and we feel we've had enough time to get to know them, or we could wait until next week, which we have a slot available. So I'm going to open this up. Commissioner Kelly, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I could not agree more that Art did a wonderful job searching for candidates for us. We had 5 wonderful candidates, any one of whom would make an excellent city manager. And I'm sorry we can't hire all of them for some reason or another, but unfortunately that's not the case. So I'm grateful for the time that we had to do a lot of reading about these candidates. All of us attended last night's meeting at the library where there was an opportunity for the public to listen and weigh in. We all had information to read that was given to us at last Tuesday's meeting when the public was made aware. We were made aware at the same time who the candidates would be. And I assume probably most of us did some research on our own too at home beyond that. Today we had an opportunity to also have interviews. We've been pretty practiced at interviews lately. Seems like that's all we've been doing. So I also had the opportunity, I'm sure most of you did too, to hear from some of our department heads from our police and fire unions, which we very much appreciate, either directly or indirectly through other commissioners, and the Chamber of Commerce. And I don't personally feel that we need to prolong this any longer. I think that we're all eager to get some person in place and get moving. This is our second go-round of this, but I think it was wise of us to listen to the community, push pause, and do this a second time. Recognizing that our candidates too have obligations to their own respective communities and need to get back to work, I would like to make a motion today, and after I get a second, if I do, ask Mayor if I can make some comments about the person that I want to move forward. And I would move that we hire Mark Washington to be our next city manager.
Okay. So motion's on the floor to move forward with Mark Washington as our next city manager. Do I have a second?
Support.
I have a second, support. So that's the motion on the table today. And we can talk about why if you think that he is the best candidate, now's an opportunity to share your thoughts.
So if I may continue.
Go ahead. I'll start with Commissioner Kelly, and then I'll move to Commissioner O'Connor, who seconded it, and then I'll open it up for others.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I was very impressed with all of the interviews, including our own employee, Tom Almonte. Really impressed. That said, in my choice, I want to explain some of the reasons. I was happy to know that Mark Washington is very familiar with the Government Alliance on Racial Equity and was instrumental in setting up an equity office there in Austin. Mayor, you started your term and decided that equity was going to be our main focus, and I know the community has come on board. We've all read, or most of us have read, even throughout the community, A City Within a City. We recognize that the city of Grand Rapids is hitting on so many cylinders, except that cylinder around economic development opportunity, particularly for our minority communities. So happy that that Mark is familiar with that. I was also impressed with his work in reducing healthcare costs, because that is something that has spiraled out of control. We've had lots of conversations about this. I know that as a nation we certainly have not solved this yet. And like so many issues, they land in our laps here at the local level. So including spouses and retirees, I was impressed with this. The emphasis on employee safety and claims. I know Craig Colson will be happy to hear that. He came out of the private sector and has done a great job for us there. The other thing that I appreciated was his sense of humor that popped up every so often, but also his sense as a communicator. I felt that he had this great combination of humility, intelligence, and just an ability to be present with us in a way that was not, it wasn't ego-driven. He wasn't throwing out acronyms that people could not understand. He was explaining things like, as a former educator, I appreciated, because I felt like as he's communicating with us, he was also educating us, and that he would carry that ability into the community. Last night, I appreciated him leading off with a story of his own life experience, and I think that to me was powerful, because we have been hearing stories coming to us at our commission meetings so often that have helped to educate all of us around this table, stories of people's experiences that have come out of places that are places of pain or places of lack of opportunity. So his approachability, his humor, his knowledge, and particularly his rational approach to determine need in the community, all those led me to believe that he has a skill set that the city needs now, as well as a fresh perspective. And then coming from a larger city like Austin reminded me of what Commissioner Jones often has said, is that we are a mid-sized city struggling with big city problems. So I think that that's another aspect to Mark Washington that makes me support him. And thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. That's a good way to start. Commissioner O'Connor, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, briefly. I just do appreciate the opportunity to have interviewed all 5 of these pretty extraordinary candidates, and it's actually a really hard decision. I struggled with all of them for some particular reason about why. I think they all bring something very unique to the table. As it comes to the city of Austin, I think people always try to hold Austin up as this amazing place. I've never been to Austin, but I watch a lot of Austin City Limits, so I imagine it's pretty cool. But at the same time, I read a lot about Austin, because I think we all read a lot about different places around the country trying to look to best practices, and they've for all intents and purposes struggled with a lot of the same things that we're struggling with now, and maybe at a different point in their place in time versus our place in time as it relates to dealing with some of these challenging issues. And I think they've certainly failed in some of those regards too. It's not just about the successes that Austin has had. It's about things that I don't know if there is an answer. And I appreciated the idea that I think that one of the comments that struck me the most was that I kind of never arrive, that you always have to keep working at problems, that they don't get solved. And I think that relates to a lot of the conversations we've been having around here, whether it's the affordability of housing, or dealing with homelessness, or dealing with community police relations, or dealing with any of these really weighty issues that we're trying to tackle. And I don't think that there's no silver bullet. There's no, we have arrived. We have never arrived. We have to keep working towards progress. And I think him having been through some of those failures, whether or not he was directly responsible for them, but being in the building with people who have had to try to mitigate the fallout from some of the policies that get in place is going to be really interesting to bring to our dynamic at this point in time in the city. I also know that as we did a lot of vetting. Art helped us greatly. Our city attorney helped us greatly, like vetting, and we've certainly done our research and talked to people who've made phone calls and reached out to relationships they have. And I think one of the things that struck me most was the the idea that Austin's doing something pretty crazy right now with their city manager structure. And I heard it from several people that of all the people that are in those assistant city manager roles in Austin, the one that they're don't want to see leave the most is Mark. And I think that says a lot about his skill set and his character. And so I'm hopeful that Mark's going to be a great city manager if in fact we get to 4 here.
All right, thanks. Others who wish to weigh in?
Yeah, I too think that we had an incredible slate of candidates, and just like when we appointed Nathaniel Moody here, we had an appreciative process with all the candidates, and I enjoyed that because we really are in a better place. So I do want to express my thanks to Art and his team for getting us people who can do the job, do it well, do it with equity, and I think that. Yeah, I love the idea of bringing somebody here from a bigger city. I just love that idea, and I appreciated his kind of down-to-earth manner as well, and the way that he was able to answer our questions and engage with the community last night. And so I think that we want to give Rosalind this gift for her birthday to get this done before Friday. And,
I wasn't even thinking about my birthday,
yeah.
but once you're over 40, they're not as important.
I just want to affirm too, I think it was the right decision for us to restart the process. And even though I was only a month in at that time and didn't understand what was going on fully, but and I think that this slate of candidates affirms that process. It put good eyes on us. People are attracted to us and want to be with us. And just like John said, I do think that it is a hard decision because these other candidates would bring different strengths. And I could say positive things about all four. But I do particularly want to tip my hat to Tom Almonte. It's no small thing to put yourself out there like that internally. Tom's an incredible asset to this city, and I have mad respect for him for doing that and for going through this process fully. And so even though I'm in favor of moving forward with Mark, I just want to make sure that Tom knows that he has my respect and my appreciation.
Thank you. All right, others wish to be heard?
May I, Madam Mayor?
Oh, absolutely you may.
Being the newly appointed Third Ward City Commissioner, it's been exciting just sitting here going through this process. I can imagine what each individual felt in answering our questions, although mine was very limited at times, but theirs was quite extensive. I would like to also make a comment in reference to the fact that I am an individual who always believes in raising up people from the ranks. I believe that if you got people in your ranks, raise them up. And I wanted to echo what you said in reference to Tom Almonte. He's been here for a while. He's done quite a bit of work in this community, and I would hate for him to be in a position where we lose him to another city, but it would probably be to his advantage as well. But also to stick around and stay and be some assistant to the new city manager. I like Mark Washington because Mark said some things that I thought was very important. He talked about the relationship between the community and the police. I used to sit on the Citizens Review Board years ago, and so that is something that has not been strongly in place here in Grand Rapids, but hopefully maybe will come back and be a little bit more stronger. I like the fact that he talked about economic development, although all of the candidates said something about economic development, but he said something that I thought was very important, and that was continuing to develop partnerships in reference to tax liabilities, people coming in with new businesses, and allowing the city to continue to grow with new ideals. For one, sitting here getting ready to make this decision, once again, all the candidates were good. I enjoyed listening to them all, but I think that my top two were Mark and Tom. And making a selection, I would choose Mr. Mark Washington, but with the aspect of not losing Tom.
Thank you. All right, I'll turn down here. Commissioner Jones or Commissioner Lanier? I almost said Commissioner Cindy. Commissioner Lanier.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to express thanks to you, to Commissioner Lanier and Commissioner O'Connor for the work that you all did in serving on the committee, the search subcommittee, on our behalf, and your work in vetting and getting us to this place where we had the 5 to interview. I also want to give kudos to Art for the work that you did, Art, and understanding again that you were coming in at a time in which there was, it wasn't perhaps the perhaps the easiest transition, because you were coming in at a time in which we had, kind of stalled. And along those lines, I also want to recognize the wisdom of Commissioner Lanier and her early recommendation that we hit the reset button, because I think, again, all of those things led to us getting to this place. To our city attorney, who's, I think, done an outstanding job of making sure that things are fluid and making our lives easy, is very appreciated. We appreciate it simply because of everything that's going on in our city, everything that's going on in terms of the responsibilities that we have and some of the decisions that we're making. It's just really good to be involved with a process that is fluid. And so thank you for your leadership. I think one of the things that most excites me about the potential of Mr. Washington serving in the capacity of city manager is it has not failed me that he would be stepping into a really, really, really good situation. And that's because of the leadership of our interim city manager, and Eric DeLong, and the work that he's done in the interim, as well as the work that he's done before then, in combination with our former city manager, Greg Sundstrom. And I think you can't mention those two without mentioning Tom, and recognizing that the 3 of them had done just a fantastic work, and the ability of Tom to continue down that path in the absence of a city manager. And as my colleague Commissioner Moody has said, the hope that that Tom will see the benefit of serving alongside Mr. Washington. I think that that's what excites me the most, is the potential for Mr. Washington to come in and learn from Eric and from Tom and from others, from all the folks throughout the city staff, and really be in a really, really good position to really hopefully not deal with a significant learning curve. I know that it's going to be a learning curve there simply because of Grand Rapids being a foreign territory and not home, but I think with the type of intellectual capital that we have in place in City Hall, I just think that Mr. Washington is well positioned, and I look forward to him having the opportunity to serve as our next city manager. I'm excited, and again, I'm even more appreciative of the work that's been done by, in particular, by the search committee to get us to this place again. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yes. So I first want to say thank you to Art and his organization for all of the work that you put into yielding us the candidates that we had before us today, and to Anita for the time that you put into this that I don't know if you asked for or if you even ever agreed to, but you did an amazing job at it. We're grateful for it. To the mayor and to Commissioner O'Connor for the multiple discussions that we had during our subcommittee meetings were really helpful, and I think helping to bring forth the candidates that we have here today. And to the candidates, this is tough, and oftentimes those who are appointed officials will frequently say, I couldn't do your job as elected officials, but I couldn't do your job as appointed officials. This is really tough and grueling to go through such a public process, to seek employment, and especially those who are seeking employment while happily working in other institutions. And so I, tip my hat to Tom, Peter, Michael, April, and Mark for being willing to put themselves out there. The motion we have is for Mark Washington as our next city manager. This would not have been the motion personally that I would have made, my motion would have been for Tom Almonte. We as a commission and as an organization has frequently talked about growing our own, and we frequently talk about equity, and we frequently talk about community engagement and being invested in the community and living in the community. And we have a candidate who is doing all of those things and doing all of those things quite well, and yet we're going to choose someone else and hope that they do those things. So it just, in my opinion, it is contrary to what I feel like we're trying to convey to this community and to this organization. I actually think that if there was another selection other than Tom, Mark would have probably been it. And so I think that he stood out immediately. I think Commissioner, when you talked about his storytelling last night, I was actually blown away by that myself, and was quite impressed with the entire time that he spoke last night was kind of telling the story. And so so it's, you know, my support and appreciation for Tom and the work that I believe Tom would be able to achieve and accomplish here at the city doesn't say that I'm not supportive of Mark as a candidate as our city manager. I just think that the right choice would be Tom Almonte for the reasons that I've already expressed. I think that it would have been great to see Tom in a different light, in the driver's seat, but I think, you know, I can't argue with Mr. Washington at all, so you all don't have a whole bunch of comments for me.
All right. I'll weigh in as well. And I don't want to repeat too much of what's been said. Like I said, I was very impressed with the slate of candidates that we have. I have tremendous appreciation for Tom and him putting his name in, and really respect all of his work. And I think that is the struggle, exactly what you said, Commissioner. But at times I also think that there's value in bringing in somebody new that has the depth and breadth and scope of experience that Mark has. So for me, it is a struggle, and it is more challenging because we all have we've all worked with Tom for a really long time, and so it makes our job much more challenging. But pretty immediately, Mark Washington stood out for me for a number of reasons, and I'll add a few to just add on to what many of you have said. But a few things that really struck me. I was impressed with his broad range of experience, not just his commitment and belief in innovation, but that he's actually done a lot of innovation in a public realm, in a public setting, in a public organization, which really is not typical for cities throughout this country. His experience with affordable housing and economic development, but also his real holistic view of not just the budgeting process, but really the role of a leader within an organization and within a community. So I will be casting a vote for Mark today, and so with that, if there's any other comments, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I wanted to mention is I also think that I personally do not feel like we've had any public hearing or received any public feedback, and I'm very appreciative of the notes that Laura captured that we received via email, but we had a public hearing scheduled for the 3rd Ward Commissioner seat to kind of make sure that the public had a formal way of communicating to us their input on the candidates that we were considering. And I think this feels rushed to me. And perhaps even if we weren't making the decision today, maybe I'd have a different decision, but it certainly feels quite rushed. And actually, someone asked me, are you all going to make a decision today? And I was just like, it was before the motion was on the table, obviously. I was just like, I don't think if I were forced to make a decision, I probably could, but it would be great to hear more from the community. And now we're here. And so I think that's the other thing that's giving me great pause. I think about Commissioner Moody, who is coming here He's had the information on the candidates for less than a week. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but just the time that it takes to be able to do your own level of homework and things like that, that's another concern that I wanted to make sure I shared, because I know we're going to hear that feedback, and I know and I agree with it before I'm hearing it that this feels too soon.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, so the motion at hand is to appoint Mr. Mark Washington as our next city manager. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
It carries. All right, so I will again add my thanks to everyone who helped with this lengthy process and getting us to where we are today. And with again, a special thanks to Art, who has done really exceptional work, especially over the last 6 weeks. And in working with us. So thank you so much. All right, commissioners, with that, we are adjourned. Oh, I should say one more thing, just as follow-up. So typical, after we make a motion to select appointee, our city attorney will connect with that individual. We do have some kind of general contract language that we drafted a few months ago. So Anita actually worked with outside counsel with that. She still has that, so that can be a starting point. And so we will just trust Anita to work through that and provide feedback to us, but also to ask us questions when she needs to. And then at one of our upcoming commission meetings, we can review that and make a decision on the contract. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.